This is Dan and Lexi from Dan Schultz Outdoors, reminding you to keep the adventures alive. Hey y'all, I'm Johnny.
And I'm Colleen. And we're the Keel Quest. And we want you to keep the adventures alive. Cheers!
Hey, this is Darren from Ride Paddle Repeat, encouraging you to keep the adventures alive.
This is David from Beastly Ironworks saying keep the adventures alive.
Hey, Kevin with an A here. Keep the adventure alive.
Hi, I'm Dan Mayotte. Keep the adventures alive.
Hi, I'm Kevin Collin, the Happy Camper. Remember, keep the adventures alive. Awesome!
Woo, buddy! Shug here! Keep the adventures alive. I am.
Ethan here, the avid outdoorsy guy, reminding you to keep the adventures alive.
We're John and Aaron.
Keep the adventures alive.
Hey everyone, it's Kylan from Lure of the North, and I encourage you to keep the adventures alive.
This is Sky North telling you, keep the adventures alive. And now on with the show.
Hey, well, happy Tuesday evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Canoehounds Outdoor Adventure Show, a show that brings you a lot closer to the great outdoors. My name is Dennis, also known as Canoehound, and if this is your first time joining us here on this live stream, thanks very much for popping in. Hopefully, we'll give you a great reason to smash that subscribe button down below and maybe even hit the thumbs up. We got a great show lined up for you tonight there. We got a couple of guests on the show who have been guests on the show in the past, but never together. They had their own individual shows, but tonight we're bringing them together because they have one epic canoe trip that that they're broadcasting right now on YouTube as a series, both their perspectives of the whole trip. And you know what? Well worth a watch. But before we get on to tonight's guests, I just want to go over a few things here like I do every week, just to let the chat over here populate, let everybody get here. Some people I'm sure are still grabbing their beers, their coffees, or whatever it might be. And yeah, we'll get on to that in a few minutes. Just want to shout out and do a huge thank you to all my supporters, my channel sponsors, Algonquin Outfitters, who are now celebrating 60 years in business. They have a fantastic giveaway that they're doing, a contest on their website. You know what? Check it out. If you don't try, you don't have a chance to win. All you need to do is go down in the description of this video. There's a link down there, and you can actually go check out their website. It's a really neat contest that they got going on. You'll get all the details there. By all means, go check that out. So that's Algonquin Outfitters. Also, our good friends over at Kid Products, makers of the Kid Twig Stove and Reflector Oven. They've been a longtime supporter of the channel. New supporters of the channel, we have Hunter and Harris canoe paddles. Hunter and Harris was on the show last week, and we talked about all kinds of neat things about making canoes, materials, or not canoes, sorry, but canoe paddles. You know, how to maintain them, how to properly size a paddle. It was a really good show. get on there and check out Milan, because he really knows this stuff when it comes to canoe paddles, and he is one heck of a craftsman. I've got a couple of these Hunter and Harris paddles here, and they are truly crafts of art. So by all means, check them out. Also, check out our friends over at Great Signs and Graphics and the Short Hills Beard Company. Great longtime supporters of the channel. So thank you very much, everybody. All their links can be found in the description below. By all means, please do check it out. If you need anything from these people, support them, because they are backcountry supporters just like we are. Little recap on last week's show. As I mentioned, we had Hunter and Harris paddles on, and we covered a lot of stuff all about paddles. So if you're looking to educate yourself about a paddle, it's more than just something you put in your hand and paddle with. There's a lot of thought that goes into the design of these things. Check it out. Like I say, Milan has a lot of knowledge with this stuff, and he will steer you definitely in the right direction. Congratulations goes out to David Gillum, who was the winner of last week's swag giveaway. Your prizes are officially in the mail. As I say every week, there is a lot of room for new channel members. What I mean by new channel members, if you look down around here, there's a join button down there. Click that. You'll see a little video intro as to becoming a Canoehound Adventures channel member. You get all kinds of perks and benefits, membership decals, and things like that. By all means, please do help support the channel. Unfortunately, this here stuff isn't free for me to produce, and all that money goes into trying to bring you a better product. Yeah, by all means. So if there's any way you could support by becoming a channel member, please do. Let's see. Upcoming shows next week, October the 5th, we have a, I won't even say he's a new YouTuber, because he's been doing this for quite a long time, but he's shown a lot of growth over the last year or so. And that would be the YouTube channel Xander Budnick, which is his actual name, right? By all means, if you're not familiar with Xander Budnick's YouTube channel, there again, let's link in the description below. He's got a fantastic outdoors channel. Check it out, and he will be our guest next week. We'll be talking a lot more about his YouTube channel. And for more information on upcoming shows, you could just follow us on Facebook at Canoehounds Outdoor Adventure Show. And I post on there all of our upcoming shows, information, links, and things like that, so that you can set your reminders for upcoming events and shows, and just makes it a lot easier for you to be able to find us here. Let's see here. Something that I've been doing for the last little while. This may be the last week, because I'm not sure if it's very well received by many people, but it'll be our toast to the backcountry, and it gives us a chance to crack a beer together and propose a toast to all the neat things that happen in the backcountry, right? So if you've got your beers ready, you can feel free to pull them out. Tonight I'm going to be drinking by Bose, a Wag the Wolf. And then after that, I got one of my favorites from a local brew, Get It the Fuck In Ya. Yes, and that's just how it sounds. And let's see here. I didn't make up a toast, so I'm going to make up a toast. And this toast goes out to all the YouTubers that keeps us very interested in backcountry adventuring, especially tonight's guests. So let's crack a beer and propose a toast to all the great YouTubers out there bringing us tireless content weekly. Thank you very much. Here's to you. All right. So we got just two more quick things here. Let's see here. If you have any topics or guests you would like to see on the show, drop me an email at canoehound@gmail.com. Okay, I will put that link on the screen here. Without you making suggestions, you making suggestions makes it easier for me. I can actually approach somebody and tell them, say, hey, people want to see you on the show, right? I worked a couple weeks ago with Les Stroud, and that was a fantastic show too. If you missed that, you go back in the library. But by all means, let me know who you'd like to see on the show or topics that you'd like to see us cover. And by all means, I will do my darndest to make those things happen. And then if we have any questions for tonight's guest or myself, feel free to put the word question in the chat over here, okay, in capital letters, so I can recognize it. I will try to get to as many as I can. I can't possibly get them all on screen. But after 8 o'clock, I will open the panel up here, and I'll put the link in. And if anybody wants to come up and ask our guests tonight a question or two, depending on how much time we have left, please don't be shy. Come on up and join us. It's always a lot of fun, and you get to meet the YouTubers that you enjoy and watch, right? So by all means, let's get involved. Let's have a good time tonight. And that's enough of the blabber, and let's get on with tonight's show. Tonight's guests are a couple of fellas who have been guests on the show in the past, as I mentioned earlier. Not at the same time, but on their own shows. And their claim to fame was back in 2017 when they outlasted their competition and won season 4 of the History Channel show alone. No easy feat in itself. Since then, their YouTube channels have grown due to their epic backcountry trips and expeditions and their knowledge of bushcraft. Please welcome to the show. We have Ted Baird and Jim Baird.
Yeah!
How you doing, guys?
Good, good. My claim to fame is actually being smarter than Jim, though. However,
I've heard
that much more important accomplishment than winning alone to me.
And your rebuttal, Jim?
There must be a parallel universe or something, because to my knowledge, that just ain't so.
Oh man! So how you guys doing? Keeping busy these days?
Pretty busy. I mean, we're on Canoehound, so we really.
I have a new baby.
Yes, you do. You do. Hudson, right?
Yeah, that's right. So that's keeping me busy, and I got doing a lot of editing, and there's not enough time in a day.
Wow. So Ted and I were talking in the basement there about the good, like you guys are your editing skills, both of you have really like ramped it up, man. Like, is it a lot to do with the video quality that you're shooting?
I think for me, it just has to do with just artistic ability,
Yeah.
I think that where we were is great. I'm finding the editing for this type of trip very demanding because we essentially have 4 GoPros. Jim's got 2 on his canoe. I've got 2 on mine. Then we have 2 main cameras with also shooting from other 2 bigger cameras. And so to patch conversations back together and everything is very challenging and time consuming, but it does give us a whole other dynamic that you don't normally get if you just go out, say, on a solo trip. You're able to have maybe some extra shots. Like one guy's taking an epic time lapse or flying the drone, and another guy's getting a shot. So it gives you more to work with, but it's definitely more challenging.
So you two are obviously sharing a lot of footage, right?
So everything that you always have, you always have that shot. A lot of the time, it seems like you have that shot that you need, but it just means there's way more footage to filter through, and it also is harder to axe footage that you don't want to use because that's one of the things when you're out there self-shooting stuff. It's like, oh man, I walked way up that hill to get the shot, and you end up kind of wanting to use it, so it makes it more challenging to sort of like compact, to sort of like compress your footage, right? And so it all takes a lot of thinking for sure. But like I just use iMovie, right? I use like the lowest kind of free software you can have, and I definitely am no professional editor by any means, but it's like the understanding the software. Obviously the footage is important, but when it comes down to it, it's like, how good are you at telling kind of a story? So you look at all the footage you have, and how can you take that and put it into a story that what happened out there? How do you want to tell that story? How can you use this footage to tell that story? So you could be an absolute whiz with the top kind of software and have the best footage ever and not have as good as an edit as somebody who has far less, just because they're better at telling a story. I think that's something that you can get better at as you go along, for sure. But like some people have the strengths in that area, and some people just kind of don't. You know what I mean? So maybe I'm lucky in that I'm pretty good at being able to tell a story. I don't know if this story that I'm telling right now is very interesting at all, though.
No, it makes sense. Yeah.
So
you're right. A lot of YouTubers have that hard time, and I'm probably one of them, right? That has a hard time setting up a story.
I mean, I think that the story is that's where editing gets really challenging, especially if you're not if you're just completely self-taught. Is especially telling a story with less footage. what, you know, I'm often doing is like filming everything. So the story is there because it's just literally like a lot of people are saying, oh, I felt like we were there with you, right? Well, that's kind of because you were, because I'm just literally filmed everything. And so it's the story is there as long as you have the camera rolling on everything you're doing. That's where it becomes very hard with battery, time, and to chop footage like Jim just explained, because you have like so much stuff of, I mean, you're not rolling on everything, but you have so much stuff that, you know, of course you don't want to use. But yeah, I mean, that's the people that say edit alone. That's the kind of editing skills that would be amazing. Like I would have no idea where to start having.
Well, you know, Ted, you know what they have,
putting into half an hour, right?
So they have like assistant editors that just watch everything, dump all the stuff that sucks, throw anything that's good. Then they have a next round of editors that slap everything into like potential scenes. So it goes through a bunch of channels before it gets to the top editor, because there's so much footage they have to go through. I feel like we could really use somebody like that for this Manitoba trip, because me and Ted shot like 4.5 terabytes or something of footage out there.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. That's a lot of footage to watch through.
Yeah. Anyway. Yeah, it's definitely this kind of trip. 25 days. So you come back and you have this massive.
Plus, we filmed the car drive too, right? So it's really 25. It's like really 30.
Right.
Oh yeah, with the drive, and yeah, so it's a massive dump of stuff. When I came back, I wanted to have stuff out sooner, but I had like almost 400 gigabytes of corrupted footage. Like tons of stuff had to be converted because it wouldn't work, etc. So, but you know, I mean, that's definitely one of the challenges of doing such a long trip where nothing's happening in between. You come back, you're like, what happened on this day? You know what I mean? And you got to find it. So anyway, it's fun.
So now between the two of you sharing footage like that, how do you determine who gets to use what footage, or is it just a free for all? So that, because you don't want your videos to look exactly the same, right? You want people to watch both.
I mean, I think that's where the creative side comes in, because the reality is we're two different people. As much as people think that maybe we're the same people and live in the same house and do everything together all the time.
Not the case.
We've got a lot of that. But if you look at, say, the intro for Jim's episode 1 and the intro for mine, like they're vastly different, but we had all access to all the footage, and that's what he put out and that's what I put out. So you just end up with different stuff because we're different people. And I mean, sometimes we ask, oh, where's this shot or that shot? Did you see it? But
yeah, like, you know, where your videos are going to kind of end at somewhat different places, and you're going to kind of just tell the story. The other guy's going to find shots that you didn't find in the mountain of footage, and vice versa. And so, yeah, we just basically share all our footage with each other, and then just you have at her, you know?
Mm-hmm. It's kind of cool because it ends up, if you're watching both, it ends up being a very different viewer experience. Like somebody could have some voiceover with drone shots.
I wouldn't know because I don't watch Ted's videos, right?
What a nice guy, eh, Ted?
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you know, it can be, and that's the thing about editing, right? You can have something, I mean, and that's why a lot of people are mad about reality TV, is that, you know, editing, is it reality after editing and stuff like that, right? We don't really know what happens. It could be just the kind of music and everything and sound bites. It could made to seem like a wonderful day or a day in hell. So
I remember sitting next to an editor one time when we were cutting something, and he said it was like from a sizzle that we did years and years ago, and I had a bunch of footage of me and Ted as kids. And he's like, watch this, Jim. This is why I never believe anything I see on TV. And he grabbed some audio off of like my cousin as a little kid screaming in happiness. And he took that audio and he put it under me and Ted play fighting and some really scary music, and made it look like we were beating the living crap out of each other, and that we grew up in some sort of horrific situation. He's like, look at this. But it's also kind of like, if you look at it, it's the same tactics that, like, you know, misinformation or, you know, all these kind of things get spread off of today. So, you know, being an editor, I can kind of like pinpoint sort of things that are BS faster because of that, you know.
Well, that's how Hollywood movies are made, right? It's
Yeah.
sound effects and, you know, things like that. That bone cracking is like a stick of celery, right? So
I mean, sometimes you need a lot of that stuff because something actually happened. You fell and broke your leg, but like it doesn't convey on film, so you have to do like add a sound or something, right? But yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the huge reasons of the rise in popularity of YouTube and stuff like that. People are tired of seeing, you know, paying a massive cable bill to watch commercials to see a lie, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, here's content. You know, it'd be nice if the YouTube started paying the creators a bit more, but
yeah, right. Yeah.
But you know, it's because it's a lot of work. But I mean, I'm sure that'll happen one of these days as money starts funneling over, because these big network shows, they have so much money. It's absolutely crazy, you know, and like their viewership is like not even as big as like freaking Sean James's, you know?
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah. Does some of your storytelling ability come from your experience perhaps on Alone? Like I know, Jim, you've been involved with a few more aspects of Alone even after you two were on the show as competitors, right?
Yeah, not really. I don't really see any of that side of it. A little bit, but yeah, like it definitely, it all helps, right? So I can go out there, be on Alone, film Alone, and then I can definitely see the edit and have a much more insight into what they did, and I can be sure to not use that so that my stuff is more realistic. Just kidding. So I definitely can kind of get ideas of what they did, and you know, use similar tricks, like you know, in my videos, you know, where you'll see the drone flying and it'll be like fast and slow, and it'll be like kind of that whip bangy feel. Like that's something that I kind of totally stole from Alone. I think they did that on a couple of seasons. You know what I mean?
How do you do that? I don't know how to do that. I've been meaning to ask him how.
Well, what you do is you take a long drone shot. So first of all, you have to buy a drone, right? And then what you do is you play it in real time, and then you cut out a section this big and speed it up, and then slow it down to natural timing. So it's regular motion, fast motion, slow motion again, and then you just put a whoosh sound underneath, maybe a heartbeat sound. So it's like, and some music. So it's like whoosh, you know what I mean? And then everyone's like, oh, I'm super
My next video just got better. Thanks, Jim.
I'm super engaged all of a sudden. Yeah, you should start this with a whiz-banging kind of intro, Dennis, that ends on you flying off a waterfall in a canoe, but we could just put a dummy there with your Canoehound hat in the canoe. You know, it'd be epic, you know?
A real dummy, right?
By the way, we don't want to make it sound like Alone isn't real. Alone is 100%. Everything they're showing happened, but we literally, me and Jim were filling each probably every week one of those books of cards, which has, what does it have? 6 per side, and then we'd have 12, 24, 64 gig cards each every week. So, you know, the thing of, say, there was a section I puked from eating too much seaweed, and it was put in over here or there. I mean, all of that stuff happened. It's just when it gets mashed together, 14 people into a half an hour. I think the episodes were maybe an hour back then with minus commercials.
You have to condense things a lot. So when you get back and you watch it on TV, sometimes, you know, oh, they didn't show this. Like, for example, one thing they didn't show is these paddles that I whittled out of a log. And everyone's like, Jim has no bushcraft skills. What a loser. You know, oh, look at these paddles. Why did he get to bring paddles on the store that he clearly bought from a specialty canoe shop? Because they're just so beautiful, right? And then instead they showed
whoa.
And
they were
us arguing the whole time, instead of, like, you know, me making these wicked paddles that were just like way better than, like, Prince Harry would use such a paddle, you know, maybe the Queen even. And so, you know, so that was
maybe to beat you with.
So yeah, so exactly. You can't, after you have the real experience, to try to condense the story, and also to condense a story that might have happened over 3 weeks. They have to fit in a short period of time. They'll put like the day on the screen, but it doesn't feel the same as when you're out there. But it's pretty impressive what they managed to do.
I feel like they might miss the odd thing too. Like there were some times where like I caught a fish or a crab or something, or maybe
what about that huge fish you caught at night? Remember that?
Yeah, but maybe I thought the shot was epic, but maybe it was too dark or whatever. Maybe they just missed it, you know, amongst all the stuff.
You're in Ted, yabberty, babberty, blue, you know?
Anyway, enough about that. But yeah, it's definitely the side of what we're doing where it's like you're doing this adventure, but then you're in front of a computer a lot and trying to learn all this stuff. And like, you know, we didn't take any editing classes. So you're just like trying to like YouTube.
That's actually amazing what Ted could managing to do, because he just up and started editing on his own. He's like, yeah, this isn't so hard at all. I would have started this years ago if I, you know, and here's me, like I was paying editors fortunes and, you know, because I didn't know how to do it and you know, and then that kind of professional level. And yeah, so sometimes, you know, there's no better way to learn than just jumping right into it. Worst comes to worst, your videos look like Dennis's. You know what I mean?
That's right. Yeah. Ultra professional. I'm working on one right now, and I got mental block going on, and I'm trying to having a hard. It has a great storyline. I'm just having a hard time.
I don't watch.
I'll find it, Dennis. I'll find it. I'll open 10 windows and I'll let him.
That's okay. Yeah. I do it for me anyway, so that's the best. Okay, guys. So you know what? I wanted to talk to you guys really about this trip, but before we get to that, I just wanted to touch on a couple milestones. Jim, you mentioned that you have a new son, Hudson.
Yeah, I do.
That's got to be keeping you and Tori quite busy now.
Indeed, it is. It is.
So you got Wesley and Hudson, and when's the new dog coming into picture?
Oh, I don't know. You never know. Could be in the next few days. Could be not for a while. You'll have to stay tuned to sign into. You know, make sure you subscribe to Jim Baird Adventure on YouTube to find the right story.
Yeah, and then
I noticed, Dennis. Honestly, it's awesome having a new kid. Tori is like so good at taking care of him and helping so much, and we're both kind of pitching in and dealing, because we know Wesley has disabilities as well, which gives extra challenges. And yeah, sometimes it's not so easy, but sometimes you just got to laugh at the shit show of it all too. Like both kids are crying, and it's just like, you know, you just sit there and you just. This is hilarious. You know what I mean?
And then Jim starts to cry.
That's what I meant.
Or he's got 3 to handle.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so
I could say that because you're on the other side of the camera, right? So Ted, you just hit a nice milestone with your YouTube channel too. Surpassed the 100,000 subscriber mark. Congrats!
Thank you. Yeah, I was actually away and I came back.
It's actually just our mom with a bunch of fake ghost accounts subscribing just to boost his self-esteem, which is really in the shitters usually. So,
have you got your plaque yet, or that probably be another month?
I didn't. I got a plaque. I actually started a spin-off channel that's a shorts channel. So like Ted Baird, because I got a lot of people that sort of like the quiet stuff, and then but it's like, how do you know, some people will put out 2 versions on their own channel, but I was like, I don't want to put out one and then another one that's almost the same and confuse people. So I was just like, you know, they started this new shorts thing. I'm like, I'll just put it up there. So I put out a quiet version.
There's 2 channels with 100,000 views, Dennis. I don't know if you know that.
2 channels.
So this is a different channel. So
100,000.
So I started.
Channel also has 100,000.
Sorry, was this question for Jim Baird? I didn't realize.
I
don't. So I got a plaque for that channel, right?
Yeah.
I got a plaque for that channel, but I haven't got one for this one. No, they haven't like sent me a thing. So, you know, it was kind of a weird question. He asked, have I got one? I got one for that one before I got one for this one.
Right.
But yeah, it's kind of weird. So it's sort of a spin-off of like short versions and the quiet versions of what I'm doing here. Not the backcountry like canoeing so much, but yeah, that'll be exciting to get a plaque. And you know, I got it, and it's like it looks cool, you know, kind of just looks like brushed aluminum, to be honest with you. It says there's some sort of silver dust on it or something, but it feels.
I'm sure with all the money you've made for YouTube, you've paid for that. So.
Oh.
Right. Yeah. Right. Okay, so now you guys did this 700-kilometer journey, northern Manitoba, 25 days. Whose brainchild was this?
Well, it's actually, I had another trip planned that Ted said, okay, Jim, let's do a month-long trip. So I came up with a route and told Ted we're going to do it. And he said, well, Jim, that's actually a 2-month-long trip. So Ted said, so that didn't go over too well there for a bit. I tried pushing that on him for a bit. And then he said, well, why don't we just do this Manitoba thing? So Manitoba had been a place that, you hear all these cool things. I've read about it in books, read a couple of Farley Mowat books about northern Manitoba, and just seemed like a really cool place. Churchill, you hear about the polar bears and the Seal River. Actually, if I'd known how awesome the seal was, I probably would have done it already. And so we kind of came up with a route, and Ted, with a little bit of coaxing and what have you, was in. So sort of, I guess, kind of both of us in a way, for sure. But pretty awesome route.
I think it was a bit too. We were talking about doing something in further north, but because of COVID and restrictions and everything, that was a challenge.
Yeah, actually, Manitoba just opened before we got there, and to go to north, it's not like there was anybody like patrolling and pulling you over and questioning you, but we actually had to get COVID tested in southern Manitoba before going to northern Manitoba and follow a bunch of other protocol and stuff like that. So, rules started to drop off by the time we got in there. But we couldn't have even have gone to the territories if we wanted to. So that was
right. So, and then I think it was the trip how originally sparked because we knew about the seal, but we weren't necessarily going to do just the seal. But Frank Wolf had done a good chunk of this route and then some from the border.
He did it the year before us, which is kind of cool because Frank Wolf, when I was up on Baffin Island, Frank Wolf was like a day ahead of me, and he took a little bit of a different route than me, and I actually saw where his group's tracks went out like that and then went the other way. You know what I mean? So there's these kind of like Frank, the other guy, Mike Ranta. I remember I was in Killarney. I know Mike Ranta's in Killarney, and I saw Mike Ranta. I'm like, hey, that's Mike. I want to wait. And I did a U-turn and came back, and he vanished. He's like the pokeroo. Then this time, when I did the North French, I'm paddling into Moose, and it's just like I just came off this gale force, huge white caps on the Moose River, and I look over, and I could swear I see Mike Ranta's canoe there. And I'm like, holy shit, that's Mike Ranta. So I pull up, and it turned out I'm staying at the house right next to where he's staying. So I pull up, and I'm like exhausted. I'm like, it's like thunderstorming. I come inside. I'm like, I'm going to go say hi to Mike Ranta. The next morning, it's like 7:30 in the morning. I go over. Mike Ranta has vanished again, like the pokeroo. And then I see Northern Scavenger, Alex, trainer, who just come off of another river in that area. I didn't see him. He called me. He's in Moose Factory. And he's like, we just saw Mike Ranta, like, out on the Hudson's Bay Flats, man. Like, holy crap. So anyways, that's just like.
Mike does get around.
I think he might be a shapeshifter. But anyways, so then sure enough, here we are up paddling much of the same route that Frank Wolf paddled the year before. So anyways, it's kind of cool.
So I think that a bit of Frank doing it too, and us having this different trip we were trying to plan around, but then not being able to go to the territories and back and forth, and then we're like, looking at it. So that was kind of in the back of our head. And then we're like, what about, a version, what about Manitoba? And we're like, oh, Frank did a trip in Manitoba. And, so I guess it was one of those things that probably been posted.
Originally was like, let's copy Frank Wolf's trip. Let's just copy Frank, do exactly what he did. And I'm like, I guess, but we can't exactly copy. In the end, we pretty kind of much did. We kind of did the same route that he did. We just started. We didn't do the whole thing. We just started further in. We took a float plane in and stuff like that. But it's a pretty. I mean, I'm not going to say it's a well-traveled route. We found a trip report on it, but there's old portage trails. I feel like once every few years, people are doing parts of it. The whole thing in one shebang. I don't think it's done very regularly at all. But I mean, it is a route. Like when we got to the cabin at the mouth, there's names on there and a bunch of YMCA camps did that and more in a similar length of time as well. So, you know what I mean? So it is a trip that people do. It's and have done before for sure.
That's crazy. So logistically speaking, now you guys, you had to plan the route. Okay. So you guys like sit down over a couple beers and hammer this thing out type of deal.
Like how do we plan it? Usually what happens, I plan a route and Ted tells me to F off and he's not doing it, doesn't answer my calls for a long time. I harass him. He just said he's not coming and I'm like, oh, screw you. I'm just doing a solo trip. That's kind of usually how it goes. And then so this time he actually finally came after I bashed my head off a wall for days and you know, finally convinced him to come along. So I didn't have to go solo. And
didn't you just say that I found the route first, Jim, like 2 minutes ago?
No.
I did. Anyway.
So wait a minute. Are you saying that you found the route and pitched this trip to me? Is that what you're saying happened?
Yeah, a little bit.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, there must be
a little bit. A little bit.
Back to the parallel universe.
I got a question for everybody in the chat. Put a 1 in the chat if you can really tell that these two are brothers without knowing they're brothers. That brotherly love, right? So logistically speaking, then, like, how do you plan like 25 days worth of food? You know, taking into account you're going to be catching fish and stuff like that too. Like you guys had a lot of gear.
Well, you know what? I mean, because of the heavy filming and the amount of filming that we do, we definitely have a lot of extra, and we don't mind clearly carrying some extra stuff, but be good to pour that down. It's different. Jim's food prep was completely different. His wife Tori made us a bunch of dehydrated meals, which were freaking delicious. But a certain amount was just a bit of calorie counting, you know, and then relying on fish because we did bring a lot of camera gear that if we weren't eating any fish, it would be pretty, you know, you'd be pretty starving at times. So supplementing with the fish is pretty key. But this trip, I was just busy and I just was like, you know what, I'm just going to, I ordered up one of those huge things of Mountain Mouse from Costco. It was like 30 And then I just like took the parts I want, saved the rest for later, you know, threw it in a Ziploc so you didn't have the puffy air in there. And, you know, for lunches these days, we just basically do bars and trail mix and fruits bars. And, you know, Jim made some
quick energy
pemmican. He made some homemade pemmican. And then we'll do kind of like tortillas with peanut butter or something. Cause like, you know, there's just not time to stop over and light a fire or get the stove going or do something. So we've always found on trips when that happened, even if we did have time, we just didn't do it. And we just go on being hungry because we'd rather be fishing or something. So this is the way to roll. You know, you just pack in you know, ton for lunch and then have a big meal and hopefully pair it with some fish for dinner and you know, but it's tough. It's one of the biggest stressful parts is doing your food prep and packing and planning it. And then you typically want to bring at least one more day, like just in case kind of thing.
I think Ted hit the nail on the head there. It's kind of like counting the calories that you're going to need every day. And it's not really a way that's supposed to overcomplicate things, but it's a way that actually makes it easier. Do I have enough food? Well, how many calories do I have when you're at the store? Should I buy this bar or this pasta or this pasta? What should I buy? Well, check the calories. How many calories are there? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's something that, you know, you do that a bunch of times and eventually you just know. You know what I mean? So now I can just go buy the food, pack it, eyeball it, and know that I have enough for a 30-day trip. You know what I mean? But that's not something that you just want to try to do right off the hop, right? Also, the other thing that's challenging is you know, catching fish. What's, you know, like you can have two rivers like in the Arctic watershed up to James Bay, The Kisagami has large headwater lakes. They're shallow, but they're larger. The river is kind of deeper, and the trout fishing is good in the rivers until August, whereas the North French, the trout weren't there. They're all hiding in deeper holes, or because it was a heat wave and the headwater lakes are smaller. That lake, the river warms up faster, and none of the trout are in the rapids. So it makes so where the pickerel, well, you got to know how to fish. You got to know where to find them in different situations, and you got to know by looking at a map and by talking to people how good the river is for fishing. So just relying on fish for food, unless you also have had a good amount of experience, can also not end well. And the reason I know that is because I've done that and it hasn't ended well before. I remember just going into a backcountry lake. Oh, we're not going to bring any food, and we'll find the boat stashed in there and we'll just fish and catch fish. Well, you get out there, the boat's gone because some drunks set it on fire and sunk it or something like that. And you're starving and you're fishing from shore, and then you catch fish, but you eat it and you're still starving, and you know what I mean? And it turns out to be a bit of an adventure, more of an adventure than you wanted it to be, right? So, but I think definitely counting those calories, learning about fishing. The other thing is, if you're going to rely on fish for food, which is a thing, like I know a guy that they did a 6-week trip. They bought a month's worth, basically just planned to eat fish, and they had everybody there. So what if you lose your fishing rod? What if you lose your line? Do you have backups? The right kind of lures? You know what I mean? So there's different. Me and Ted one time ran into a bunch of things and smashed a whole bunch of our rods, and all I ended up with was a stick. And but I did have a spare reel that I managed to use a stick and use snare wire to make guides, and ended up catching the biggest fish of the trip on the thing. You know what I mean? So so just for anybody. There's obviously, I'm no expert about this, but at the end of the day, if you're just going to go to the store and grab a bunch of food and eyeball it and say, oh, that's probably good for 30 days and whatever, we'll just eat fish and grabbing a rod, that might not really end too well without a little more thought and a little more experience.
Yeah, you gotta look at calories, because I mean, if, like I said, I grabbed the Mountain House, you could be like, there's 30 days and throw it in, but as we all know, or most
some of those, some of them are very high in calories, right?
Well, yeah, there's 400 calories in it, right? So you got to know, I'm pairing this with fish, or I'm pairing this with whatever. And what does it say? 400 calories, good for a whole family of 10 or something, right? So whatever it says. Yeah. So you have to look at that. And when you're doing the kind of exercise we were doing out there, you're going to need to increase your calorie count enormously, you might live, but it might be horribly miserable, and then you'll probably get in a few blow-ups once you start getting hungry, and tired. But yeah, so you want to look at that. Try to narrow in 4,000 calories a day or something like that.
Hey Ted, remember on the Adla talk? So we did this one hardcore trip across 4 rivers across northern Quebec and Labrador, and by the end of the day, we were running out of food too. And by the end of the day, we didn't have enough calories for multiple reasons. And you get the fire going, you get food. And my friend goes, well, now's the part of the day where you apologize to everyone for being an asshole when you're starving hungry. You know what I mean? It became a freaking daily ritual. He's finally get something in, and you're oh geez, I feel a little bit better, because you're pushing, it's getting dark, you're starving, you haven't eaten, and you have to. It can get challenging out there too. And I think that trip, we ended up extending the trip by 9 days or something like that. And
that was a trip where we supplemented. We had to supplement a lot of fish. Luckily, the fishing was really good, but it did.
We also got a bunch of geese too.
Yeah, we got geese and stuff, but we did get a cold snap where it really dried up and we were hurting, and all we had was a Mountain House, right? So when we rolled into town at the end of the trip, we had one moldy pita, half a moldy pita, and I think the one Mountain House at the lowest calorie one you can get. And on the trip, we had eaten so many fish and geese and all kinds of stuff. So, that's one where you would have needed a food drop if you're going to do that, and not supplement some sort of sustenance, because it's just not. Or do it a week faster. Bring less, do it a week faster or 2 weeks faster kind of thing.
And then you can see, like, so we have like a food barrel each, Dennis, that you mentioned that we bring a lot of stuff with, you know, I noticed a little condescension in your tone when you'd said that.
Not much condescension.
First of all, have you seen what like guided companies out west, like that do the Yukon River or the mountain or the Nahanni? Have you seen the so they bring like way more stuff than me and Ted bring. They bring like multiple double burner Coleman stoves. Like, you know, of course there's not as much portaging out there, you know, but I think that, like, you know, people that, you know, like Morris Kohansky, the more you go, the less you carry. Like Morris Kohansky said that because, you know, not too many other people said that because, like, all of those other people died out there carrying nothing. You know, I'm just going to go. Right. There's like this whole bizarre world that people think they can just grab a bug out bag and live in the woods indefinitely. You know what I mean? Ain't happening. You know what I mean?
Believe me, I don't mean that with no disrespect, because I know, like, I see you use all your gear and stuff like that, and it just amazes me at some of the stuff that you, just like a pack mule through the bush, man.
Well, the problem with us is that, you know, we do bring a lot of stuff, but like, you know, like you look at the Peak Brothers, Cliff Jacobson, a lot of these guys that do hardcore, like, northern routes, they'll recommend carrying a little bit more for sure. But also the thing with us too is that, like, I don't think if we really broke it down and we're like, this is the camera and camera related shit that we have on us, I think you'd be like, oh my God. Like, we're talking about on this trip, it was like one extra huge heavy bag each would be what it would accumulate to, right? So I have extra stuff in my day bag. You know, this one, somebody's asking who carries the Jackery. Ted carried like a 25-pound Jackery. You know, then you count tripods, you count batteries, you count cables, other charging equipment. You know, that it adds up quick. You know,
we also have so we'll have a system. We have the Jackery, and we have a bunch of anchor batteries, right? Which are, you know, have like a double USB, because then you can charge GoPros and like mirrorless camera batteries in your case on the go in the day, and so you keep cycling it, and then you charge the anchors with the Jackery at night in the tent kind of thing. But you, of course, and then you bring a bunch of backup batteries. But in the back of your mind, you're like, what if the Jackery breaks? What if it gets swamped? What if we drop it and smash it? What if, you know, we're going out there and we're doing this for our business, and we can't really afford the production to fail. So you do end up bringing maybe some more battery stuff than you otherwise would have had to.
Yeah, like a loan will just fly a chopper in and replace your $2,000 camera that you broke. And they'll just, you know, you'll just, like, you know, if you'll message them and be like, I just smashed my $3,000 camcorder, the chopper comes in and gives you a new one. This is like old Jim and Ted don't have these kind of deep pockets.
No.
But so it you know, we do have a lot of camera stuff, but I mean, you know, there's definitely a few things we could trim, but you know, we could have a lighter tent, but honestly, when you get into some bad weather out there, it's good to have a good tent. In the past, and we were really thankful we had it. A lot of the time, 9 times out of 10, we were like, you know, we don't need this tent, right? Or we never even used we used the tarp once. I mean, we used it for sail and like once at camp, right? So you could have been like, we didn't need a tarp, but
if you needed it, you had it, right?
And because we are doing
lighter than us, though, Ted? Like, you know,
what's that?
I'm sure Frank Wolf travels lighter than us. You know, you can when you do travel and everything's going good and the weather's good and you have enough food, you know, it's you can make way more distance for sure. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Also,
I mean, we travel kind of like, and the thing is, we'll do it once you have a certain gear is expensive, right? And it's definitely a different system. Like we did a trip with Sean in Algonquin, a 7-day, 110 kilometer backcountry trip, Nipissing and Burnt Root and all through the interior. That's the kind of trip, and we did single carry for a bunch of it. That's the kind of trip you don't like. We still could have gone lighter, but you want a light canoe. You don't want to travel with this, but we're so used to doing this whitewater stuff and these, you know, that like that's the gear we had.
Well,
so
think about the whitewater. Think about the whitewater, right? So if you're not in the rapid section yet, you're carrying an extra spray deck each, right? Then you're carrying 2 throw bags each. You're carrying air bags each. You're carrying a dry suit and probably a helmet as well. So that's stuff that might not be,
And you probably put in an extra thwart.
Yeah, so if you look at that, whitewater outfitting stuff, plus then on top of that, you probably have a Royal X canoe or a Tough Stuff expedition grade canoe. So if you add all that weight up together, and we're just going up to upriver towards the Haida land and then through lakes. We're not even we're 300 miles away from where any of the rapids going to be. We just have this stuff in preparation. So if you look at a dry suit, a spray deck, 2 throw bags, you know what I mean? That's another backpack right there. You know what I mean? So that's extra stuff as well,
We also could have gotten a little bit better shape for the trip, Dennis. I said to Jim, I was like, maybe we should have pumped some weights. I'm like, we should have pumped something other than our dicks before this trip.
There you go, ladies. It happens.
But we came out of
this year, like you guys were loaded down. Like you have to admit, your spray skirts were like they were bulging at the top, right? And I know it was the gear. Don't get all proud on us, Jim.
On that same time.
We know it was the gear, right? No, but you guys, how long did that Jackery actually last you through that trip? Like
we had your shoulder charges. The Jackery we brought it fully charged, okay, but we get tons of sun up there. So we brought a small 60-watt panel as well. And so I'd throw the panel out on the top and we just kind of top it up. I'm not sure how long it would have lasted completely on its own at the end of the trip. I still had some anchors that were charged. I had some backup batteries that were charged. But you kind of, instead of just dipping into all of that, you just kind of keep charging everything. With a lot of these batteries, it's better not to let them go completely dead. And to just kind of keep topping it up, right? So whenever you got the chance, we got really lucky that I think it was unseasonably and strangely hot. Like before we went up there, we were worried about ice. So I checked satellite imagery of Big Sand Lake and, I'd still see ice, but there'd be 1/2 an hour of every day for months that I could kind of see through the clouds. Then when we get there, it's just like ripping hot, like in the 90s, like 35 degrees, not a cloud in the sky and blasting wind every day. But so we had good sun, which helped us, keep things fully charged. But I'm not sure. There was one time where I think one of our batteries just kept draining it for no reason. Didn't really make sense. And all of a sudden it was like way down, or it was a glitch. I don't know, but so the panel helped us there, but, so we did have a freaking solar panel too, to carry out there. So it was, a lot of stuff, but,
So it was Ted was really on top of like getting that panel out, constantly charging it. It's like a constant kind of task that needs to be like managed and dealt with and stuff like that too, right? So it's a lot of extra work.
You got to capture every bit of sunshine that you can, right?
Yeah.
So to answer the question, I don't know exactly how long the Jackery would have lasted. We did some math, but as you know, we're not like mathematicians, so we were like, or electricians were like, yeah, but the Jackery should last us beep, 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 beep. And we're just like, we were wrong.
Totally wrong.
Totally wrong. We thought,
well, ultimately you got through though. You got through it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but I can't tell you, sorry, I can't answer exactly how many. It lasted 15 days. I think for most people that just pre-charge would probably last you the whole freaking trip. But we're charging
if
drone
you want to
batteries.
carry 25 pounds, that is,
like, and we're charging drone batteries.
Sure, it takes a lot of juice to charge drone batteries.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. So now you guys, when you guys got dropped off first day, made a couple calls on the sat phone back home to the Loveys. And then you guys start paddling, you get on the river and you start realizing that the water levels are really, really up. I think in your videos, Ted, you were mentioning like, what are we going to do here? Can we get through this? What was the challenge that was faced there? Was it really as bad as you
I
said?
actually got a comment because when we're coming up there, the shuttle driver told us in southern Manitoba or whatever, water levels were way down. And I got a comment that said that was weird because that's what they experienced. But I got another one. Somebody says they were in Leaf, and he said that they got 10 feet of snow last winter. And as we knew before we went in, Frank had super high water going towards the end of the season. So I think what happened is it froze up high, and then they got 10 feet of snow. So we just had like, you know, a bizarre, it was June, so we expected it to be higher, but we had a really crazy amount. And it in the end, it just created anxiety. And this is always sort of how it ends up being. You get this anxiety, you get stressed, you make it out to be more than it ends up being. It did slow us down. It did stress us out. But you know, our initial thinking when we got to that first rapid that we had thought was runnable, like a class 1, class 2, and it was just like a raging class, like class 3 with a 4 drop. And with a class 4 drop, we were like, you know, this is the first rapid leading a headwater lake, right? So we're like, if this rapid's like this, how are all the other rapids going to be, right? That are feeding out of these 120 kilometer lakes. But it turned out to be a pinch point, and the seal is kind of wide, and it was definitely high. Some stuff, I mean, we used Hap Wilson's notes on the river, which were great. But as he points out in some of it, like you can't really use some of these notes depending on the water levels. And like we ran into that a couple of them where it was like class 1 down the side, and it was like a just
class 3.
Yeah, class 3 just missing a class 4 by a hair if you're really good. So, but you know, so yeah, but it was okay.
That was
more dangerous
for the Seal River. So our route was we drove to Leaf Rapids, and then we did a puddle jump about 70 clicks to get us up a stretch at a Barrington, which even though it was only 70 clicks, it probably saved us about 5 days. And then from there, we went up the remainder of the Barrington. We went over the height of land, and we went into the extreme headwaters of the South Seal River. So we paddled the South Seal to the Seal River proper, and then to Hudson Bay. But there's a lot of, you know, massive lakes to cross on the way as well.
Right. So when we're in the lake, Big Sand Lake, which is 120 kilometers long, and it's big sand, you look at the topographic maps, there's huge sandbars and beaches that are incredibly epic. And when we're there, we paddling over them, you can't even see them or touch them with your paddle. And you're like into the forest. And you're like, if this lake is this high, how is the seal going to be? And I think a lot of our fear comes from not really understanding a Manitoba's topography. There isn't a ton of waterfalls and portaging, and like if that water level was here in Ontario, what we're used to, it would have been like you can't run this river, right? Because it would all be like that first rapid we encountered with the crazy pinch point rocks, like, you know, unrunnable. Right?
Yeah.
But Manitoba, it's kind of wide and flat and very different. So.
Yeah, so like if anybody's ever paddled from Southern Ontario or around, if paddled the lower Madawaska River, that's a river that the rapids aren't really like mini canyon, you know, pinch points with steep sides. It's a river that actually kind of gets blown out on super high water. So the rapids actually become easier, where like a river like the Magnetawan, where it's kind of like a pool and drop river, and each rapid is like a mini canyon. So high water, the rapids just become insane, right? Because there's no way for the water to just come up and spread out. It all gets forced into a canyon kind of thing, right? So fortunately, like, you know, the topography of the Seal, it was more along the lines of something that, you know, would still allow it to be runnable when the water was high. So in some cases, it actually might have made it easier. In some cases, it made it overall harder for sure, but it didn't make it unrunnable. But my God, man, the power of that water and the size of that river. Like the South Seal is big. The Seal River is huge. Seal River is one of the most beautiful rivers anywhere in Canada. It's a Canadian heritage river. And you think of Manitoba as being flat, but there's long kind of gorge-like sections. We paddled sections with ice canyons, seals swimming up the rapids. We were paddling down like 3-kilometer long rapids with seals swimming up the rapid like this. Like I paddled a river called Porcupine River, Dennis, in North Saskatchewan. Saw nary a single porcupine out there. But like on this one, as soon as our bows touched the water of the Seal River, there's seals everywhere. Seals popping out of the woodwork. Seals jumping, playing in the rapids. It was
sort of like when you see like surfers and there's dolphins in the waves.
Yeah,
there's literally one of these huge rapids. There's seals just jumping in these things. You're bombing down these canyons and seals porpoising up right beside your canoe as you're navigating a class 3. It's like a fairy tale. The seal is absolutely beautiful.
One time
the rapid sets are runnable, long, gorgeous stretches that are challenging but not undoable. So it's up there. The fishing wasn't as good.
Because it was like seal. I'm like, oh, seal. He's like, seal. I'm like, okay, another seal, cool. And then he's like, seal. I'm like, I know, Ted. Seal. He's like, no, seal, like the singer. And then there was the guy Seal. The singer was there.
Wow, that was
deep.
God.
It was bizarre, just there in Manitoba. That your roses
so when you hit the height of the land, or when you started going with the river, there was the water as big going with the river as it was going up? Because you had the
high water helped us, I think, going up the river, because if it was lower, we'd have to portage. But once we were going down, it was all right. It definitely made us portage when we didn't have to. Normally, you would have to. It made things a little sketchier. It made sections. The river is huge. Like I've never paddled something like with this kind of volume and this kind of size. And there's sections for sure, if you tip, like you can't, like you're like a kilometer from shore in the middle of the rapid. Like it's so huge that you got to go for a long swim unless you want to lose your gear. So, a bit higher water might help you than risk getting pinned in that kind of situation, right? Whereas if it's bouldery, you could get pinned. But it's up there. The Seal is up there. I highly recommend it. Absolutely.
The Barrington, like going up river. Sorry, Tori. Tori just came in and told me to take it down a notch. So the Barrington, when we were going upriver, like it was challenging. Do you think you're going upriver? Well, geez, high water, that might not be good because there's more current. And we were paddling against current, but there's nothing that we couldn't really manage. There's all these challenging parts where we're wading up rapids, we're pulling up rapids, and I actually got my foot stuck between boulders one time, and that current almost pushed me over, and I would have been like literally leveled like this. And it's if you've ever gotten your foot stuck between boulders in a serious way while you're wading in a rapid or in a river, you really start to wonder sometimes how the heck it got in there, because you can't get it out. And when they'll warn you about this in whitewater safety courses, and until you really experience it, you never realize, oh, that's what they're talking about. That's why this is so serious. And that happened to me once out there. And so that when I was wading up the river, and if I had fallen during that, and I would have been in a situation where it would have been sketchy. I would have had to drop my boat. It would have washed back down the rapid, and I would have been clinging onto bushes trying to get my foot out. So the kind of like danger factor might have been more. It's more dramatic probably. But if that water was lower, you'll see a whole bunch of sections every time we got to a rapid where we're going upriver. We either had to beast paddle up the swifts, and some were even more than swifts, which like really beat the hell out of you, or we'd have to get out and wade with holding onto our canoes, right? And you'd be kind of exhausted. I'd be trying to pull off into an eddy, tie the thing up or whatever. But if that was low water, it would have been taken way longer, and it would have been more physically harder, because we would have had to either be bushwhack portaging or trying to portage up those rocks and every swift and every rapid. Well, because of the high water, we're actually able to get up there. And I'm like, well, hopefully this water drops by the time we get to the South Seal. Like, yeah, right. It's just going to all of a sudden, drop. And then we started getting concerned when we saw the water like push right up into the trees. Like literally there's like standing waves in the forest in some places. Yeah, it was super concerning. You know what I mean? Like, because the thing jumps in your head, like, if this is going to be like, I'll put it this way: a river that's in flood is not a safe place to be.
No, yeah. Wow, that's crazy. And how much did the double blade paddles help you through this whole thing? I know there's this whole debate out there with YouTubers and paddlers and stuff about single blade, double blade. You guys are covering a lot of territory.
Honestly, was completely critical because we took 2 solo canoes. So if we wanted to make the distance and time that we were trying to make in the schedule, go up the rivers, these kinds of things, it was absolutely necessary. Part of why we made that decision was so we could catamaran our canoes and navigate these huge lakes in really heavy, wavy, windy days, which turned out to be a smart decision where we would have been windbound. But it's more exhausting. So you can keep tempo to a certain degree, probably not as fast as 2 tandem paddlers, but it's much more exhausting than if you're sharing the load, so to speak, with someone. And then, as you pointed out, Dennis, me and Jim were probably able to bring more gear than we would have if we had 1 canoe, which is not good. But I ended up, because of the seal, I had a carbon fiber Werner paddle, which is not really the best for whitewater. But because of the seal and it being big water, I'm like, I've never used this. I don't really have that skill when you're using a tandem or a double blade of bracing. It feels weird, right? I'm so used to single blade and bracing and doing different things. But I was kind of liking learning that new skill. Like, I can obviously paddle flat water, but so I kept rolling. I switched over, but then later I kept rolling with it for a while. And I just enjoyed liking it. So I definitely would say there is a place for it. Years ago we paddled the Moisey, and we bumped into a guy who soloed the lakes and the whole river with a kayak paddle in a canoe. So there's a place for it, but I'd say there's a place for both. I do not really enjoy the fact that it splashes. It's kind of more, it's way less relaxing and calm. And it sort of takes away from that nostalgia. I'm not going to lie.
It doesn't really feel like canoeing in the same respect, but it's safer on waves on a big lake.
Yeah, it is safer.
The reason that we had to take it is because we only had X amount of time. We had X amount of kilometers in front of us. And we had one vague trip report, and we were trying to keep up to the same pace as people in that trip report, which we managed to do. There was a couple when me and Ted were pushing distances through big lakes where we had to catamaran. We were doing, I think, 42 kilometers in a day some days. And a couple nights, I think we only slept for maybe 4 hours and just banged off 40K days back to back. Paddling solo, in flat water, right? So that's something that we wouldn't have been able to keep up to that, especially with all the big open water crossings, the safety, the fact that 2 canoes gives you the ability to catamaran, and also the fact that we had to keep pace with a trip report, which is how we kind of loosely dictated our travel schedule. And we couldn't have done that without double blades, trying to keep up to a bunch of 25-year-old guys, paddling tandem. Tandem is way faster, man. Way faster.
It's also even once we catamaran, we were really slow, but we noticed we're way less exhausted because we're just paddling on each side.
The nice thing about that is it's sort of a rest for you too, right? It's a respite, right, from paddling.
Yeah, a little bit,
without having to bust
you're
your hump,
not
right?
doing the double blade thing. It literally for every 2 strokes you're doing 1. So it anyway, there's a place for it, but you don't always need it, for sure. You don't.
So now I got somebody on Instagram sent me a question that they wanted me to ask you. I don't know if they're in the chat tonight, but it's Wild Paddles, and he wanted to know: is it always about being in beast mode for you guys, putting as many miles as possible, or do you guys ever relax, take in the beautiful spots you like to travel to?
Yeah, I think for sure. I think that like what is kind of considered beast mode and not is all just very, very subjective to what you're used to. I mean, there's been times when I've been in much better shape than times when I haven't been, but I've been more experienced, and being able to just make it further because that's what you want to do, and that's kind of where you are kind of mentally, you know what I mean? And so there's something nice. Sometimes when you're on more of an expedition, you have to make time, and that might not be fun in the moment. There might be some type 2 fun, but when you look around and realize what you did, so it's not as much as a vacation as taking time and lily dipping, like this guy who asked the question. He obviously likes to kind of go on more picnics and things like that, where I like to do more, expeditions and do more hardcore stuff. That's fine. There's things like there's trips for older grandparents and there's trips for men, so I like to just kind of do the more
what a jerk
hardcore.
No, so I think for me personally, I like it somewhere in between. I really enjoy the challenge of the physical aspect, but I do want to stop and smell the roses and take time, because we like to fish. Take time in the fishing hole. A couple places, but one in particular, ran into this walleye fishing on this hatch, and we managed to take time and figure out to hook these maws and catch them. And some people that are doing like a real push trip, counting kilometers, they don't have time to do that. That's not their thing. But that's important to us to take some time to explore, to take breaks, to do some hikes and see things. And so it's somewhere in between. My first trip ever, this kind of thing would have maybe seemed too much, like, oh, all we're doing is on the go. But now it's not so much that way. And the reality is, if you want to go and see these places, you have to push, right? You can't do a trip like this, or else literally you would need food drops along the way. Or be like overwintering or something crazy, right? And so, there's the times that you're just going to have to, we're in the absolute wilderness, right? So you got to make distance. You travel if you can, right? If it's safe. There could be a crazy headwind, but if it's safe enough and you can make it 1 kilometer, you do it, right? But yeah, there's definitely moments where you're like, wouldn't it be great to just fly in here with your buddies and fish this spot, right?
Oh yeah, and there's times too where it's like, oh man, like I remember that one walleye slam hole where I drew a fish on my map.
Yeah.
Like that would have been great to sit around and freaking slam a tank, or Big Sand Lake. We like when we were crossing it, we were hoping we were going to catch all these lake trout, but the lake was just gigantic waves, and we couldn't get out from shore and jig. And the places that we weren't having luck fishing the other kind of ways, that would have been nice to stay there for a few more days and try to catch a big lake trout or whatever. So yeah, there's times that I wish that we'd had more time in certain places too. But to be honest with you, when I do like a regular camping trip now, I just find it to be boring. To like if I'm staying at the same campsite like multiple days in a row, I feel like there's just nothing to do, because I like to be exploring, using my muscles, like looking what's around the next corner, discovering.
It feels good, right? Getting that much exercise in a day. I was just doing an edit, and Jim had said something where he was like, look at what we did yesterday, looking at our normal daily lives, or most people's every daily lives, compared to what happened in our day yesterday. I think we went 43 kilometers and sailed and
built a catamaran and a sail, bucked like enormous swells, beast paddles into headwinds, etc., etc.
Yeah, so it feels good, but and then once you're in that physical and mental state, it actually feels good to be able to do that. I mean, the only people that can kind of get that exercise every day might be someone that teaches a spin class all day, for example.
Yeah.
You can't. It's impossible to do that every day, and it eventually will feel awesome doing that.
Yeah, it's like when I go car camping. I just set up, and I'm just like, I feel like there's like nothing to do unless there's like a bunch of really cool hikes. Like one place I've gone car camping is the Bruce, and we portaged all the way and paddled up Georgian Bay and went into some cave, and so it's cool, but sometimes, yeah, like I kind of feel like I like to be traveling, you know what I mean? Because honestly, canoeing is it's all subjective. It's all about what you do, and I just definitely don't want to knock whatever somebody else does. But I also don't like. When people are like, "Oh, why would you want to do such a hard trip?" Like, I'm not knocking you for doing a wussy ass trip. Why do you have to be doing a bad?
It's all about the challenge, right?
Well, you know what? It feels good. Like I hear a lot of people say, and I'm the same. Like I've gone to the Caribbean and stuff, and it's great. But a lot of people will be like, after a week or 10 days at the most, they're ready to come home. They're done. They're bored, right? Yeah. So there's something in us where we need stimulation as people, hence why we keep doing more and more and more. We can't settle with anything, right? We're going to be going to Mars soon or whatever, right? So that's just how we are. And I think that these kinds of trips, they don't come out of nowhere. They're stimulating, right? So if you're needing time to relax and you need that R&R, you do that, and you chill, and that's important. It's good for your mental health and good for your time. But at a certain point, it's good to see what's around the next corner. And I think,
why do you do these things? Because they're enjoyable. They make you feel happy, right? But what really is happiness is fulfillment. Happiness is, you might seem happier minute to minute on a beach in the Caribbean getting hammered off rum or whatever, right? But are you really going to feel fulfilled from doing that? Probably not. That's why you probably can't do it for more than 10 days. You know what I mean? So, you're going to come off a trip. You're going to look at me and Ted and be like, Jesus, these guys don't look happy. They're getting swarmed by bugs. They're going beast mode. They're dumping sweat. They're dodging animals. You know what I mean? Like they're trying to punch each other in the face, etc. You might look at our facial expressions and say they don't look as happy minute to minute as this guy on a beach in the Caribbean. But when we're done that trip, we're going to feel so much more fulfilled than the person who is on the beach in the Caribbean. And ultimately, that's what makes you actually happy and feel like you've accomplished something and makes you feel good. So that's, for me, why I like to challenge myself on some of these trips. Has a lot.
I think it's good too, because it really forces you to be in the moment. You don't have a choice. You got
to get through it.
Right. You have to get through it. And so a lot of what our daily lives is stressing out over certain things we don't really have control over. And
my August canoe trip was like that, man. It was just trudge, bad weather. And you got to do it. You got to get through it, right?
Bad weather.
At the end, it's like, we did it, right?
Yeah. But I mean, just having some good weather makes all the difference, though, doesn't it?
Oh, I didn't have much of that.
Brutal.
Not much of that at all. Yeah. If you watch my videos, Jim, when they come out, you'd see that, but don't worry about it.
I should. I've watched a couple, actually. I don't. It's so tough, man. Like, first of all, by the time I get through one of my edits, I can't believe anybody watches it, because I'm like, this has lost all meaning because I've spent so much time on it. And then it's hard for me to find enough time to watch everybody's videos other than Ted's and stuff. But I do try to make the rounds, and every once in a while I'll try to get caught up on different people I know who are doing YouTube too. So I don't think that I never watched Dennis.
That's okay. I forgive you, Jim. Okay, I see one question here. I want to ask. This is a follow-up question for Jim from Darcy. After this question, we'll get on with the swag giveaway, and then we'll get back on and maybe invite a few people up on panel to ask questions. Darcy says, a follow-up question for Jim. What percentage of a typical day would you say Ted spends bungling around? That was a big topic in your video there.
So there's different kinds of, bungling kind of goes from like a category 1 to a category 5. And then so like a full rip bungle would be about a category 5. So full rip bungle is when I'm already in the boat and Ted's like just like bungling around with something. This is his face usually, you know, and he's trying to fit, and he drops it, and then he's trying to untie something, and then he'll go get his tackle box open, and then all his lures will dump out on the floor, and he's got to like organize all the lures, and I'm like way down the lake. That would be like a category 5 bungle, right? I've been bad at it from times too, right? So percentage of time Ted spends bungling, probably about 5 kilometers worth of paddling would be about the daily Ted bungling. Maybe give or take between 3 and 5 kilometers a day. That's how far I could paddle if Ted's bungling was reduced, to give you a more accurate answer as it would relate to the outdoors. Love you, Ted. Nice fireplace there.
I was just going to say, Ted, you got a rebuttal for that?
The best note before he goes.
You know what? No, like bungling is a legit bungling. Okay, bungling is actually a legit thing on canoe trips, right? Because everything you have is so important, especially when you have a million little camera cables and stuff, right? Memory cards, and like you're like, did I format my card? Whatever, right? But so it's like a legit thing, or you've got all your important stuff is maybe in a day bag. And so what you do is you're like, oh, I'm going to need my whatever it is. And you forget, and you pack it all up and click it down and shove it under the spray deck and tie it down. And then you're like, oh, I forgot my tackle box that's in the bottom. And you pull it out, and the other guy's like, we need to go. And you're that's a serious bung.
Stressed out because the other guy's yelling at you, and then you get stressed out, and then you start bungling even worse.
Right.
Then you just wind up crying in the fetal position.
So systems are really important on trips, right? At a portage, right? If you've got lots of crap.
Ted started just giving me his stuff just because I was bungling less. He's like, oh my God, look at here, just take all my stuff and you just give it to me when I ask for it. Because I had this bag with like a little like magnet strap where I could flip it open. I could reach behind myself, flip it open, pull out the sunscreen, pull out the bug spray, and then just put it back without having to pull the bag and undo it and sort through it. Ted's like, oh my God, here, just take my sunscreen, take my stuff. You know?
Right. So bungling it's a legit thing, and it's stressful. So, you know, but Jim did a
Heather, that's what I was trying to just bring up is that, so there's just a message from Heather, Ted's wife, who says, I told Ted he was bungling so many times on our last canoe trip because Heather saw that term that I'd used as Ted was editing, and a light bulb went off, and Heather said, this is just what I'm imagining happening. Light bulb went on, and she's like, that's it. That's what he's doing. That's the word for what Ted does that enrages me all the time. And then so she started laughing herself silly, and then started accusing Ted of bungling.
Well, you know, the other thing, Dennis, is Jim is not a small human being. He's 6'5". What are you now? Like 497 pounds.
Left leg.
So what he does is he'll like paddle ahead, right? Like he paddles ahead. Like I was probably in a little better shape by the end, keeping up, but like he'll like beast paddle. He's like beasting for like 4 hours. So I'm like maybe a kilometer behind. He gets there, he ties on his favorite lake trout lure. Oh, I'm so looking forward to this blah, blah, blah. And I get there and I start tying my on, and he's like, let's go, and starts paddling. And he's like, you're bungling. I'm like, you're just faster than me, bud. Like, you're enormous and you're faster. That's just how it is. And then he's like, well, a lot of the Olympic rowers are small. I'm just like, you know, okay. So I suppose that
if I really weigh 400 pounds, I would be creating more.
Aren't you at 490? I thought your head was like 490 alone.
Slower. I would be slower then, Ted. So once again.
Anyway, so that's a bit of it. That is a bit of it.
Our reality. Just kidding.
But no, there's
okay, Ted. If it means anything, I'm a bungler on a trip too. I'm the guy that's got to make sure I got all my shit together.
Sometimes I feel like that too. And then when the other guy's ahead of you and he's got everything figured out more, and then you're back there bungling around with God knows what. I can't even think of something that I bungle over. And the things are endless. I don't even know. But yeah, it happens. So honestly, the bungling, if a great lesson that I don't know is when you're on a canoe trip, if you have your systems really down pat, like you're going to get to portage and this is going to go here, 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 and anything that can prevent bungling will get you 5 kilometers further at the end of the day, and 5 enjoyable kilometers where you're not just bungling around doing work, getting stressed out, getting everyone else in your group mad, potentially shedding some tears, and who else knows what could come.
You know what's funny though, Dennis, is that you read a lot of trip reports, and the people that are honest, it's good that we're brothers because we can get in blow-ups and we kind of get over stuff. But you read a lot of trip reports, and some of the hardcore ones where they have pushed and they weren't prepared, or they're good, but maybe they were in the best shape, whatever. I do often read a lot of I grabbed him by the scruff and screamed in his face type moments. I think Hap Wilson had a moment where he pulled a gun on someone on one of his trips. In his book, what was that? Was that on the seal, Jim?
I don't know. I never read his, but I think some guy was creating some sort of enormous danger to the group, and some Hap pulled a gun on the guy, and
not actually, but the point is things get heated.
He wrote about it in his book that he pulled a gun on someone. He wrote,
Okay, well there you go. So things get heated, and a lot of it stems from aggravated bungling, I think.
Yeah. Here, Scott out and about says, Jim, I never bungle Baird. Yeah. Okay, guys, you know what we're going to do here? We've hardly touched anything on this trip. I just put the invitation out there. We'll take up to 5 people into the basement here to come on up and ask Jim and Ted a question. I'm going to do the swag giveaway really quick. So I'm going to drop you both into the basement. You guys can go for a quick beer or get rid of a beer, and I'll have you back up right after the swag giveaway. Is that cool?
All right.
You guys are good to take questions from a few viewers?
Yeah, and of course.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so we'll catch you guys in about 5 minutes.
Okay.
There you go, guys and gals. This is hopefully everything that you've expected. Jim and Ted. Lovely brothers, right? Okay, so for tonight's swag giveaway is actually sponsored by our good friends over at Algonquin Outfitters, celebrating 60 years. All right, so there you go. By all means, check out Algonquin Outfitters. They got their big 60-year anniversary giveaway contest going on. You can find their link in the description below. The question for tonight's prize, actually, I'll tell you what the prize is, just like the last couple of weeks. Sorry for the autofocus. Yeah, we're giving away a Canoehound Adventures swag package, as well as a few goodies from Algonquin Outfitters, which includes a $25 gift voucher and a free day rental of anything that they rent at any of their locations. So a few good things, and then there's going to be all kinds of stickers in there and stuff like that. So you can't win if you don't have a ticket. And tonight's question for the giveaway is, Jim and Ted were the winners of which season of Alone? Okay, back in 2017, I believe it was. Just let us know what season that was. Email your answer to coasprize@gmail.com. You have until Saturday at 11 o'clock to get your answers into me. At that time, we will do a draw. I'll notify the winner, and we'll make the announcement next week as to who the winner was. So by all means, get your answers in. I'll leave that on screen here for a minute, and I am going to bring Ted and Jim back up. Hopefully you guys got yourselves all loaded back up with beers. Cheers again, boys.
My friend told me not to drink any more beers because I'm starting to get too angry with Ted or something. So
he's having fun, Tori. He's having fun.
Nate.
We got somebody in the basement here, Keith Park. How you doing there, Keith?
Tori's getting. Never mind. I'm back on.
Well,
hey, how's it going?
I'm good. It's a nice quiet night in Algonquin Park.
Yeah, you're up on Canis Bay, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm in last week of lake trout fishing, so I did it last year, and I'm doing it again this year.
Cool.
Good time of year.
Little windy today. It's kind of hard to fish and paddle my 16-foot canoe when it's 30-kilometer-an-hour winds.
So what do you got for
So
the
if I had
boys
to,
today, Keith?
So, in all your adventures, guys, and this was a question that was asked Les Stroud a couple of weeks ago. What's the worst thing you've ever eaten?
Eaten?
Yeah.
Worst thing you've ever eaten?
Oh man, I mean, I'd have to answer that personally. That would definitely when we're on alone. I mean, I don't even know what it was called, but at one point we're like, this is survival. There is no tap out button. That's what we need to do to win. So we like picked up a rock out of the ocean and scraped it and ate whatever that was.
Yeah, some sort of like gooey kind of sea creature that we literally scraped off the bottom of the rock, several of them.
Yeah, and we were in my mind, like limpets were kind of gross, but at first I was like, I learned about them and I'm like, you can eat them raw, right? So I'm like, I'm just, you know what? It's all in your head, right? Because we can know if something's super healthy, but that doesn't mean we won't gag trying to eat it because mentally we hate it. So I literally I'm just like, I'm going to eat this limpet raw. I'm going to get past it. And it just like guts exploded out. It was just raw. It felt like eating a bouncy ball. Like just disgusting. I pounded some of the seaweed out there. There's this bladderwrack stuff, not palatable. It's got a lot of like iron or iodine or something in it. And barf. Yeah. So
the grossest thing I ever ate was a slug out west.
Oh yeah, the slugs. Nailed it. Sorry.
Banana slugs.
And just the goo, the slime on them is pretty substantial. So I'd say that was probably up there. I'm trying to think if there's anything else grosser, but I don't think so. So I think just eating a slug.
Well, I'd say Jim, it would be shit sandwiches for you, but everyone knows you don't eat bread. No, but he hit it. It's the slug. So on alone, we ate these slugs. They have banana slugs. They're like this big, right? And when you roast them, you can roast off. They shrink, and you roast off the slime, and they're not bad.
I don't like bread.
But when we boiled a few, and you can eat them without gutting them, but they're so big you need to like gut them like a fish. So I think both of us boiled and ate slugs that weren't gutted, and when you boil them, they produce like literally Ghostbusters type of slime. Like it's next level. That I'd say was the grossest thing I've ever eaten. So there you go. I agree with Jim on that. Ghostbusters.
Yeah, but there you guys are doing it for the prize. What about in a not alone situation?
We didn't do that more than once.
No.
Not alone. I don't know. What would you say? Just
what was your worst Mountain House meal?
Mountain House.
I don't know. I've kind of like I like to eat like fairly tasty things from the woods. Just found a huge thing of chicken of the woods today. So when we're not starving out there in the bush, if we're eating any like wild edibles and stuff like that, but some things that people might think are gross.
Jim's pemmican was disgusting.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that pemmican there. Oh, there's some nice chicken of the woods. Yeah.
Right?
Whoa.
Look at that.
Yeah. Pretty good, right?
Those look like funnel cakes.
Right? That is a hell of a nice specimen, But, Ted says my pemmican was gross. I thought that was good. So what pemmican is like, for anyone that's not familiar, it's basically the fuel of the fur trade. So the voyageurs would eat about 1.5 pounds of it a day each. And it's made out of bison, dried pulverized berries, sometimes, not always with berries, and then rendered fat. So when you cook bacon and there's like liquid in the bottom of your bacon pan, that's actually rendered pork or lard. And so you can basically is when you melt fat, you mix it all together and it hardens. It lasts forever. So I made a whole bunch of that for our canoe expedition in northern Manitoba. Packs a ton of calories, but it takes some getting used to though. So the first time I gave it to Ted, he thought it was gross. And we did bring some. We were allowed like some rations on a loan, but when we were out there, it tasted good because we were so starving, right? So some people
on a loan though, that was like store made pemmican. It was a little better, but it probably didn't have the calories. So You know, on a trip, I'd say, like, honestly, you know, like we don't eat that bad stuff. Like some mountain houses have been gross, but you know, like just packing down, honestly, packing down maybe.
I think it'd be mountain homes, Ted.
Right, mountain houses aren't too bad. I don't mind them, but packing down maybe like one of those super high calorie chalk protein bars is disgusting.
Oh God, the bio protein, the GNC ones. They're like super high, just gross.
Not so bad. Not so bad.
How much of the pemmican did you bring with you, Jim?
I think about 4 pounds or something like that.
Yeah,
which was a lot.
How much do you need to eat in a sitting? Like just like
well,
a granola bar?
I don't know, but I kind of would stretch it out. So I wasn't eating 1.5 pounds a day or anything like that. But I'd eat like a couple bars about that big and about 1 inch thick.
Yeah,
you know, in a sitting, whatever, with that, some trail mix, and be good to go.
Cool. Very good. Anything else for the boys here, Keith, or should I move on to our next person in the basement there?
I don't know. Can you see there's your sticker, Dennis?
Oh, thank you, Keith. There we go.
Good luck out there, Keith. Slam a tank.
Oh, I hope so.
Yeah, man.
Okay.
Good seeing you on the weekend, too. Have a good one, Keith. Thanks. That's awesome. We've got somebody else down here in the basement right now. We got Evan Hammond. How you doing, Evan?
Hey, guys. How's it going?
Good.
Man. How are you?
Question for the boys?
Hey, yeah, I'm from Alberta, right on the Rocky Mountains.
Sweet.
And yeah, I got a question. I've never actually paddled a canoe in my life, but your videos are super inspiring to me, and I just want to go buy a canoe and get out there and get at her. So my question is, do you have any tips for someone that's starting and anything like that, or something people should know? Or
yeah, I would say you know, get a book on canoeing strokes, because canoeing is actually one of those things where you can actually look at it and like read it and picture it in your head and look at the pictures and then go out there and actually do it. Where a lot of the things like hockey, it's kind of hard to do it like that. I'd start maybe just on some lakes or stiller water, and then are you a fisherman at all, Evan? Do you like fishing at all?
Oh yeah, hardcore.
Yeah, so like I
live for fishing.
What's that? I would go for cutties on like the Bow. That's a river. I don't think there's any portaging. You can start up river from Canmore or whatever, and you can just float it. I don't think there's too many rapids, and you can just hit all those.
Yeah, I've kayaked that section.
Nice. Okay. Well, there you go. So I don't know, but I would that's something I'd always be interested in doing. But I don't know, Ted. Do you have any other thoughts there for getting started in a canoe?
I mean, you know, I think just getting started, you know, obviously, you know, be safe. If it's cold, wear your life jacket, that kind of stuff. If you're not confident in the canoe, stay close to shore. And, but, you know, just like the first rapid I ever paddled, I think was on the Nahanni River. But when I was young, I like paddled and hit boat wakes in the canoe. Right. And so a lot of it, you know, you kind of start if you can, and you go with a group, it's safer, you know, like the part of the reason me and Jim brought 2 canoes. If we lost a canoe in a rapid, we have another canoe we can get out. So if you can do that, that's better. But yeah, just get out, like Jim said, and practice some of those strokes. You don't have to get too worried about like mastering the J stroke or anything. Just essentially, you know, you paddle, you want to turn left, just pry off the left, and your boat will go like there, just prying off. Do it on the right, pry on the right, you'll go to the right.
Don't be able to switch sides too. I think Mike Ranta switches sides every 3 strokes, right? So
yeah, so
get out there and have fun, think it, and be safe.
Yeah, but like anything, it just kind of takes time, and you know, practice and failure and learning from your failures and that kind of stuff. I mean, if you want to do rivers, find like a little swift, and you'll start to learn what happens. Like when we first started and we were watching rapids, we'd bomb a bunch of things with some big standing waves. And then we thought, well, that looked bigger than this. That means we can bomb into this huge hole, right? That, or whatever frothing thing. And so we tried it and learned that, no, you can't do that. It's not the same
the hard way.
So a little bit of trial and error. You want to be safe and practice on some slower moving water and catching the eddies, and you'll pick it up. But yeah, I mean, you know, just getting out there and trying. And I honestly, like, I probably didn't even, like, on the Nahani, like, I probably did like 3 J strokes the entire trip. It's the first whitewater trip I ever did. So, you know, I'd say just master a couple.
Give her, bud.
Yeah.
Evan, do you have any friends that have canoes out there?
Canoeing isn't really a big thing in here in Alberta. You see a lot more kayaking, and our rivers are all so small that you can walk and wade most of them. So,
right.
Well,
we
kayaking is fun too, man.
Because of oil exploration.
Yeah, I mean,
because of oil exploration, there's no
a ton of stuff like me and Jim.
Yeah, it's not very remote in Alberta, right? Because of all the oil roads everywhere, so you can't get yourself in too much trouble.
That's good. Yeah.
I backpacked from Banff up to Grand Cache one time. That was pretty remote.
Oh yeah, that area gets a little. I live near Hinton, so that's close.
Oh, okay. So you live in northern Alberta then?
Northern Alberta, yeah, right along the Rockies there, kind of between Hinton and Drayton Valley, kind of.
Cool. Yeah. No, I've been up through Hinton before. Yeah, that's sweet. Yeah, I drove from Grand Cache up to the Territories at the Yellowknife, so I drove right through Hinton. You know.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
But, I always thought it'd be cool to like go paddle like the Snake Indian River in Banff, or like, you know, what was that, the Smoky River or the Sulphur, but they're all pretty low too, right? And then the Snake Indian is like consistent raging current and big waves. Like you got pretty
check out the Upper Red Deer River.
Upper Red Deer?
Upper Red Deer River. Yeah, look that up.
Right.
If you ever get a minute, look that up. That's a good one.
All right.
Huge bull trout.
Oh, nice.
Perfect.
But anyways, thanks guys, and have a good night.
No problem. Have a good one, Evan.
And you too.
Thanks, Evan. Appreciate you popping on panel here.
Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, so we got a lot of shy people in the chat tonight because we got nobody else in the basement coming up to ask a question. So that's all right, because we got a lot more about your trip there that we can cover. I wanted to know about the polar bears.
Jim's going to accuse them of bungling.
Yeah, I wanted to know more about the polar bears. I seen in the highlights, I think it was in Jim's video at the end there, you guys encountered bears about when?
Yeah, so I mean, bears are a thing up to like 70 kilometers up from the coast. They're more rare, but right around that area on Hudson Bay, like polar bears it's one of the only areas where they actually form together in large groups waiting for Hudson Bay to freeze up. And that's why there's like such a big polar bear tourism thing out of Churchill with all the tundra buggies and all that kind of stuff. And so that's like a really cool thing about paddling the Seal or the North Knife or one of these rivers that goes to Hudson Bay in Manitoba, is because it's like you're going to see polar bears almost guaranteed. But that's also one of the scary things about it, because, you know, they like to eat people sometimes, and they don't actually eat a lot in the summer either. They're hungry, but we saw them out there, you know, in the tidal flats, in the shallow water, trying to hunt beluga whales. We must have seen at least 5. And we were just basically trying to be safe. You know, we carried a firearm with us, and, you know, we made sure that we weren't going off too far by ourselves. And you know, we were smart about it. And usually if you're smart about it, 9 times out of 10, you'll be fine and you'll just get to see some polar bears. It'd be awesome. But a few times we were just like sitting there looking through our cameras, you know, getting zoomed in, and we've been kind of zoomed in and all dialed into that bear. And then we'd stop and kind of like, you know, because you just feel like, is there one coming up behind me here? You know, you always kind of have that feeling that there might be a bear coming up behind you while you're there. But yeah, Ted, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, we managed to get to the coast. The coast was a highlight. We managed to, the whole Seal River was such a highlight. Like, it didn't have as good a fishing as up in the south, but
because all the seals eat all the fish.
Yeah, it was absolutely spectacular. once you start getting about 70 miles or so from the coast, you start thinking bears might be coming up. So that's constantly in your head. And as you're paddling, you're looking at white rocks and stuff, and you're like, that might be bear. And as you start paddling down, you're like closer, you're zooming in with your camera, like not a bear. But yeah, when we got to the coast, like right away, as per usual, it was a long day, and Jim just looks up and he's like, polar bear. And there's
right as we're getting out of the canoes, right? As soon as we got to the coast and we got a canoe, immediately polar bears.
Right. And a mother with 2 cubs. And when you see, we've seen a bunch of bears, but when you see it, even it was a decent distance. It wasn't super far, but good distance. You're like, whoa, that is big, you know,
like triple the size of the black bears we've seen.
Yeah, like the baby
really quick, eh?
Oh,
yeah, like the babies were like black bears, right? But they were like babies behind the mom, and you're like, that would be a good sized black bear, right? So yeah, they were huge and just absolutely a highlight, spectacular. We should have put out the what's it called, the trail cam night 1, because they walked around our little cabin there, and we didn't get it, but we were able to view them trying to feed on belugas. It's super cool.
We were watching polar bears so long that I'm watching polar bears, and then I'm just like, we're watching polar bears. And I just started to walk. We were staying in this little shack. There's a shack there at the mouth, just so people don't get eaten. And when you're waiting for a boat pickup, and Ted's like, "Where are you going?" I'm like, "I'm going back to the shack." And Ted's like, "What are you just bored of viewing polar bears?" I'm like, "Yep, I'm good." You know?
Yeah.
Just come back out.
But there were sometimes that they would.
It's like a guaranteed thing, man.
Yeah, really cool. And they would come, and sometimes they, you know, one of them we were watching it feeding us. The tide came in. It came back, it started swimming back in, and would dive underwater and pop up, dive underwater and be close. And one time the one came up, kind of looked at me, went underwater, and in like 30 seconds, it swam like a freaking kilometer and popped up on the beach over there. Just totally
crazy. Yeah.
There's room for concern there, because those things, they swim like a seal almost, right?
Well, they literally, they can swim. They can hold their breath for like 10 minutes. They can swim for a long time.
Hundreds of meters underwater, lightning fast. We witness this. Like, it's one thing to hear about it, and polar bears can swim underwater for hundreds of meters. Like, that's cool. But when you actually see it, you're just like, holy shit, that is way better than I ever imagined. Unbelievable. Yeah. How is that possible?
You know why? They never smoked a cigarette in their life, right?
They didn't give us any trouble.
We got a couple people here in the basement. I just want to, you know what? I'll bring somebody up, and then I'm going to pop a couple questions on from the chat, and then we'll get to Josh as well. And I think that'll be it for people in the basement. So Russell, Josh, we'll get to you in a second. Actually, we'll get Russell up right now. Russell, how you doing tonight?
Hi guys, I'm doing good. How are you?
Good.
I figured
for the boys.
It couldn't be a regular Canoehound show without the appearance of the disco ball. So here we go.
Yeah.
So anyway, guys, this is a little bit off topic, but is there any more plans for another longhouse?
Another longhouse? No plans as of now. As of yet, no, unfortunately.
No.
Yeah, of course. I'm talking about Sean James, right? I was bugging him to help him out with his next one, but I think my help would actually have a negative impact. Work would actually go backwards. I thought, maybe I could help out with a longhouse outhouse, a lout house, if you would. And then, you know how you each had your own areas in the longhouse? I thought, I could put in a basement apartment in the lout house. But
right. Well, that's what Jim like my ideas. It was Phil Sean's outhouse. That's about all he managed.
I have to. Both Jim and Ted, were you guys a little sad to see the longhouse come down?
Yeah, I mean, I think so, but Sean actually gave us a heads up beforehand, before he did it, and before he put the video out, just because that we'd all put so much work on. But that's how it goes, man. Like that, you know, you heard what happened, you know, with the roads going in and this and that and the other, and he probably wanted to, you know, remove that, use all the stuff, which he did, and so, you know, we kind of understood it. It was an awesome project, and we had a lot of fun.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that, you know, you're in a tough spot, you're moving, and it's not the cabin, right? So you can't, like, you know, probably it's not the kind of thing that you sell the property with, right?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, unless you have
what choice do you have if you're moving, right? It just is what it is. But yeah, I mean, it kind of sucked. It was actually like, you know, of the vision of all the things we might be doing there, that was kind of, you know, disappointing, but really it is what it is. I mean, you know, reusing the materials and all of that kind of stuff. Like, what else can you do? I kind of feel bad for him that he had to do all that extra work.
Yeah, and what a neat project. And that's what, you know, it'd be cool to do something like that again. It is a lot of work, and finding the time's hard, but the amount you learn from it. It's like when I was making this pemmican, Russell, that I was talking about, and in doing a little research, I learned about the Métis, and I learned about the pemmican trade. I learned how much the Voyageurs used to eat a day, and you know, the pemmican wars of the pemmican proclamation of I think 1816, and all these things. And then actually making it, I realized what an enormous task, what the scale of this would have been to make that much pemmican to fuel the fur trade. And you really get, and so in making the longhouse, you start to realize, oh my God, the amount of work to harvest this material. Forget building the longhouse. It's harvesting the material. That's an enormous job. And how many people it would take. And, you know what I mean? And you start to really get a way better idea. So it would be neat to do that project or another project of a similar nature. And I would recommend anybody does it in a sustainable, legal fashion, doing something like that, because if you're into like history, or if you're into, you know, any of those kind of things, nothing is really going to teach you about it in that kind of way until you actually are hands-on.
Yeah. Actually, Ted, you took a lot away from doing that build yourself, because a lot of your videos, your shelter building videos, are focused on, you know, peeling back the bark and making, you know, a natural bark roof shelter.
Yeah, I mean, I went out and did a few more of those. It just so happened that a storm came through and blew down some trees, and it was definitely more tedious than with the longhouse, because, you know, as sad as it was, there was the ash borer coming through everywhere, and but we were there in the spring, and so getting this bark was a lot easier than when I was there. There's literally trees that blew down a year before, and it was November, so it was very tedious peeling them. But I just kind of, you know, it's just like any of these things, you learn as you go. I just went in the bush. I'm like, I'm going to stay here for a bit. I'm going to build a shelter. What am I going to do? I'm just like, walk back here. I'm like, well, here's a tree, right? I'm like, maybe I can peel this bark, you know, and let's start with it. All this seems kind of tough. Maybe I should give up. But I'm like, no, it's coming. And it kept going. And, you know, that turned out to be, I thought it was white ash. I'm pretty sure it was actually basswood. So I think I got that wrong on that one. But
basswood has that thick inner bark that you can actually use to, it's like the like the Haudenosaunee and that used to use that to tie their long houses together and to make cordage.
Yeah, like the cordage that comes off, but it's super thick and heavy, and maybe a little more tedious to take off. But yeah, it's just one of those things that part of why I like the adventure, like even the bushcraft stuff, is that you go into the bush and you have an area, but you don't know what's going to turn out. Everything depends on what materials are around you at the time. And that was the theme with the longhouse. We actually went in there not knowing we were going to use the ash trees. And we started peeling the cedar because we were going to make cordage with it, but also thought maybe we'd be able to use some of that bark. And then it took taking down one for a ridgepole and peeling the bark. We're like, this is it, right? This is what it's going to be. And then, of course, they were also threatened and had infestation. So
yeah, I actually got a bunch of all the ash trees on my property all died. I got a bunch I got to take down. But I think traditionally, like if you go to Ste. Marie amongst the Hurons there in Penetang, they'll tell you that it was actually elm bark that they used. Traditionally, of course, all the elm have died as well too now. So
right.
Anyways, Russell, I don't know if we answered your question, but we just certainly. Usually, when I can't answer a question or if I don't know the answer, what I do is I just say something else that sounds smart.
I don't think it really sounded very smart, but.
I know.
Thanks, Russell.
My big takeaway tonight is. My big takeaway tonight is I learned the term pemmican wars. I never thought I'd hear that.
Oh yeah, you got to check it out, man. Absolutely.
All right, thanks, Dennis.
Cool. Thanks, Russell. I'll see you in the room, bud.
Enjoy the raspberry rock.
Awesome. And you know what? We got 2 more guys in the basement. They're going to take a couple questions from the chat, and then that'll be it for the evening. So let's see here. We got Josh, who's been waiting down here. Dave, I see you as well. Hold tight. Josh, how you doing tonight?
I'm good. Hey, guys.
Good.
Hey, Josh.
Hey, Josh.
Awesome to see you. I'm a child of the 80s, so it seems really weird to see people that I watch on TV and be on live with them. So awesome to see you guys.
Thank you.
So you guys, like, all your trips are a huge inspiration to me. Like, I want to get out there and do stuff. I do quite a lot of backpacking. I grew up canoeing, but I never did any canoe tripping. And I'm just curious, like, you see, I'm sure there's other people who you inspire or hopefully inspire to get out there, right? But how do you know, like, when you're ready for a particular trip, right? Like from short trips to longer trips, because some of the trips you guys go on, like, it seems like there's either no help or like very little help, or it's going to take a long time. So at what point, like, for people who are just starting out, like, what's the measurement of I'm ready to take this trip, like I've done everything I can to be safe and like I'm physically able to do it and I have the skills necessary to do it?
So I think the short answer would be, being able to look at it and know, okay, what am I afraid of? What's the worst thing that can happen? You don't even get emotional. What's the worst thing that can happen? And can I deal with those things specifically? And how do I deal with them? And how do I prepare for them? If it's a piece of gear, research a piece of gear and buy it. If it's a skill, research the skill and learn it. You know what I mean? And I think that is the best thing to do. The only problem with that, and Ted will probably agree with me with that answer, is that sometimes people, a little cockiness is okay, or just some guts. I think if you're not scared to go out there, that if you're not a little bit nervous, you're not a little bit scared, then potentially that could be a problem, because you should be a little bit. But I think the only problem with me saying that, and I doubt that you're this way, but some people will just think that, well, nothing can stand in my way, and that could run into trouble. So be humble, admit what's the worst thing can happen, and don't cut any corners and do the due diligence. And yes, you want to start smaller, but that's the best way to assess the trip. What's the worst thing that can happen? Is this a whitewater trip? Okay, what level whitewater trip? Oh, it's an intermediate whitewater trip, and the water's not too cold. So, I'll probably give her. It's a little above what I can do. It's rising the bar, but you know what? Worst thing that happens, I dump a couple times, I'm not going to die. You know what I mean?
Right.
So being able to assess things and then figure out how much of a learning curve it is to be able to do those things, I think that's kind of a good baseline for judging if a trip is something you can do. Does that make sense to you at all, Ted?
Yeah, and I would say, I think a lot of people's concerns, it depends what kind of a scale of trip you want to do and what you've done so far. There's one of the comforting things about, say, doing just a river trip is that you might be able to buy the maps for certain areas, be like, okay, well, if I needed help maybe you have some calms. I could call for a pickup in this lake, but I shouldn't get lost if I stay on the river. Even if I lose my canoe, I could walk the river or whatever it is. I think a lot of people are worried about getting lost. You're on this huge lake. Like, what if I get lost? What if my GPS breaks and I haven't taken a bearing on my compass? So now I'm not actually sure where I am, and you don't know how to like triangulate your position. So it you know, those kinds of things is very similar to what Jim's saying too. It's sort of like talking yourself through the possible things that are fearful going into it. But once you've kind of checked a few of these boxes, often it's not going to be as bad as you think. You deal with weather, certain things that are kind of mentally bad, but not actually going to hurt you. And then, and then once you get on the water, things feel better. Typically, there's a lot of anxiety.
I couldn't agree with you more.
And then once you get out there,
and you take that first stroke, you're like, all right, this is awesome.
Right.
But yeah, don't shy away on the planning and the research. You know, over planning is a good thing. So, how does that help you?
Don't bite off more than you could chew too. Know your skill level.
You know what? That's something that definitely you should say is and that's kind of a way that you assess how not to bite off more than you can chew. Does that make sense, Dennis?
Yep. Oh yeah. Baby steps, right?
Yeah, anyways. And like the guy's question, are you guys always about beasting and counting kilometers? It's not always like that. But what we did in our recent trip would feel like that for some people. But it took a while to get to that point where it doesn't feel like counting kilometers for us, right? So you start with something, some of the trips I did, it was like, that trip was amazing. It was like a couple weeks, but I'm like, oh, it'll be nice to get home to my bed. It takes time to get there. So I think just stay in your comfort zone and go out of it a little bit, because that's where the adventure comes and it feels great. But prep, like Jim said, and you should be good. And that's part of why we like doing it, because there are some risks, right? And that's what makes you feel alive. So
I think that's the piece, like sometimes viewers or wouldn't always take into consideration is all the years of experience that you guys have and whatever skills that you bring to the table. We just see like these massive trips where you guys are killing it, right? And doing amazing things. And it's like, oh, I want to go do something like that. And you have to realize, like, wait a minute, what skills do I have or don't I have to be able to take this trip? So
absolutely. And you don't have to jump into something too insane. Like your adventure can be fine if it's not so intense. I think also we just did. There's different ways that you can. I'm not super familiar because we're not normally going with guided groups. There are guided groups you could pay. They tend to be expensive, but sometimes there's other people you can meet up with that are like, we're going to paddle the seal or just the seal. We're going to meet up for a practice trip. We're going to do this whitewater course. You can bang that on a weekend. You do a weekend trip or a 4-day trip where you do practice rapids in a safe environment.
Yeah, like we'll do before big trips. We'll do a practice.
And then you're like, these people are going to do the seal, and you take that jump that, I don't know them, but I'm going to, they seem good, and now we're going to do it together.
And also, if you grew up paddling, which means you probably spent time in the bush and all that too, on top of that, that's worth a lot, man. That's worth a lot, just because
for sure
you're not scared of the dark, kind of thing, right? So yeah, I wouldn't be scared to raise the bar a little bit, just don't go crazy. And man, I think that
don't go crazy and don't wait too long.
Yeah, don't wait. Get up there. Also, it's not freaking mountain climbing, right? Like, no offense, but to a lot of you'll talk to certain instructors and guiding companies that'll make things sound like it's absolutely terrifying and that it's super dangerous because they want you to take their guided thing or they want you to take their course.
Right.
Reality, if you just take the time, and those things are great. Like, I would recommend doing those and taking courses and taking whitewater course, but you can learn it and do it.
If you just take a whitewater course, it's like anything now. We go through the school system, this and that, but anything nowadays, you want to learn something, you can find a good course, find a good instructor, take it, learn that skill. read about it, learn that skill, go on the internet, learn that skill. If you want to paddle a whitewater river and there's a wicked fishing hole you want to get to, but there's maybe a class 2, class 3 that you're worried about, this and that, go take that weekend class, paddle that course. And after that, you'll just feel amazing. You'll be like, I can do this. Like, I'm going to get there, and or do that little compass navigation class that's a weekend or whatever it is. And you'll start to feel that anxiety. Will start to feel like, it'll go.
Yeah, man. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Awesome. I enjoy all the content, guys. Thanks for sharing everything.
Thanks
for joining us there, Josh. I appreciate it.
Take care, eh?
Cool.
Take care.
We got one more in the basement here, and then we'll get on to a couple last questions. Dave, welcome to the stream. How you doing?
Hey, guys.
Hey,
buddy. How's it going?
Good, man.
Yeah, so I didn't hear too many people talking about fishing too much with you guys, so I just wanted to see what, after seeing a lot of your guys' videos, many multi-species of trout and whatnot you guys have caught over the years. So basically just want to know what's your favorite fish to eat and your favorite way to cook it while you're out in the back country.
Mine is probably just brook trout, gutted, nothing too big, with a little bit of Old Bay, That's just it. Just cooked right so you can peel the meat right off the bones. You can't go wrong, and when it's a good size, it doesn't have to be huge. When it's just a decent size, that's probably my go-to. But I love everything. I mean, that Labrador trip me and Jim did years ago, we got into landlocked char, sea run brookie, Atlantic salmon, freaking char, lake trout,
Atlantic. Just 6.5 pound, what we think is a sea run brookie, might have also been a char. Anything like I think those are going to be my favorite. But
even the Lake Superior, like we paddle up the lake trout on Lake Superior on Slate Mountain, super deep, clear, cold water, just
cold water,
so good. But I gotta go with those brook trout. Just a little pan fried.
I would agree with Ted, but also pickerel or walleye. Pickerel it's not only the flavor, but it's just the melt in your mouth texture that they have, right? So but it's still, man, when I got out there on a brookie trip, Dave, it's always the first fish tastes the best. Because when's the last time, if it's a spring brookie trip, you never had a nice fresh brookie, probably. You might have caught one through the ice, but you probably hadn't had one for a while. And when you get out there, you catch one on day one, cook that one. That's my favorite fish. The first brookie of the year on a brookie trip. That's my favorite.
Yeah. Right on.
Yeah, man.
Dave, you sound like you're at work.
I am. Yeah, don't tell my boss.
We all good then?
Yeah. Okay, guys. I better let you go. We'll talk to you later.
Okay, brother.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it.
Tuning in, man.
Cool. Yeah, you know what? I this is embarrassing to say. I've never caught a brook trout. Never.
Well, it's tough to catch in Southern Ontario. Like you have to go to where they are, and you have to go when the water's cold, right?
Yep.
So you know what I mean. And you got to just want to quest after them. You know what I mean? Like you're not really going to find too many that easily in the front country. You got to just go early. That's all there is to it.
Let's see. Just something come through. Okay, cool. Okay, couple questions from the chat. We'll do quickie answers on this, and then we'll call it an evening because we're at the 2-hour mark now. So, Chris Prowse, I've been holding on to this one for a while because Chris always has a great question, and she says, "What's the best story that wasn't caught on camera from this trip?"
Well, the time I saw Bigfoot, of course. Just kidding. Best story. Oh, geez, with the amount we roll on everything, Ted.
I don't know. It was probably Jim's category 10 bungle.
Category 10 bungle.
I don't know, man. For me, it was probably there was some stuff going on.
Oh no, Ted, you know what it was? When the bears walked around the cabin, dude.
Right. Yeah. So there's stuff going on with the polar bears that where you were, if you just had the lens, you had the, or if we were okay with harassing them with a drone.
Well, if we had the trail cam, we had polar bears. So we put the trail cam out the next day, and what did we catch? A freaking wolverine knocking the trail cam over. And before we set that up, because when we came, we heard these noises. We were woken up by polar bears outside, and we came out, and there's polar bear tracks surrounding the same mother and cub that you saw there at the beginning in my trailer, in Ted's trailer. So I would say me and Ted in a tiny shack on Hudson Bay being surrounded by polar bears is the best story that we didn't catch on camera.
Yeah. I'd say yeah. So a few things with the polar bears, there was even a scene where if you had a little better lens, there was a polar bear that like jumped and tried to grab a beluga on the whale, and you couldn't really catch it. But yeah, I'd say that's probably it. That's one of the ones I really regret, because we had the trail cam, we just didn't put it out, and they were there.
Son of a beast thing, and we lug this whole thing as if we don't have enough stuff already. We lug a huge trail cam. We use it once, and we get a wolverine on it, and then we miss the polar bears. Anyways. Cool. I'm bringing that trail cam more often.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It was so wild where we were, and you come out the next day and you're like, there's huge wolf tracks, there's wolverine tracks, there's this and that. And you're like, why aren't we putting this out? You're walking around there in the day and you kind of just think, there's nothing around here. Like whatever it is, you kind of, but really stuff comes around.
Have either one of you ever had an encounter out there where you were sort of shitting your pants type of thing? Like with a wild animal?
Well, Jim almost shit his pants first thing in the morning every morning. Part of why he said I was bungling, because he thought that shit up, right?
So let me tell you something. Giardia, one of the long-term lasting permanent effects from severe Giardia is lactose intolerance. I don't know what it was when I was eating, but Ted was always like, no wonder Jim gets such a good start in the day, and he's always behind me bungling, because every morning I'd wake up with explosive diarrhea, and I'd be like, I gotta get out of here, and brush out of the tent. And the first thing every day, Dennis, we hit northern Manitoba at the absolute peak of bug season. And, my twig and berries, Dennis, would just get absolutely ravaged. Just bam, bam, bam. And by the time even the dump had flown out of my ass, Dennis, I already had 10 bites on my knob. I'm not even kidding. I'm sorry, but this is not,
there you go. That takes us right back to the question that Chris asked. Best story that wasn't caught on camera.
Sorry, Chris. Maybe that was the best one. I was just saying, how do you cover that on the Discovery Channel? That's not getting on. I'm talking, and you start the day in a bad mood, Dennis. You know what I mean? It was horrific. Anyway, so that's a very, very true thing about life on the trail in bug season in northern Manitoba when you've been rendered lactose intolerant from severe Giardia.
Yeah, Gord, I think we just answered your question there too, right?
Yes, yeah. Although I think it might have happened in Churchill, but
Oh, geez. How many days did you spend in that cabin out there? Were you there for a couple days, or just like an overnight, or waiting?
I mean, I don't know, but I'm not going to tell you. Oh no, that was caught on camera. I don't know. In that cabin, just we did a lot of pushing to get through this, and then we actually did it perfectly because we wanted to kind of get like ahead a bit, but we also, because we didn't know what it was going to be like. And then once we got to the seal, we were like, the current was so strong, we were just flying, and we could have made it. We could have finished the trip probably. We would have had to blast through the seal, but we probably could have finished the seal 4 days ahead of time if we wanted to. So we planned it so just to make sure we were there on time for our boat pickup. The boat pickup, you have to paddle over 1 kilometer out to the boat, and there's big waves and it's sketchy, and you want to make sure that you're there. So anyways, we got there a day ahead, and that we knew that would give us more time to watch the polar bear. Couldn't have worked out better with all the logistics, plane, trains, automobiles, and boats on this one, and boats, motor, and
a lot of it too was because of COVID. Certain things were just like they were operating, but they were operating like not in the same kind of way they normally would. So it was like Jim had managed to get a guy out of Snow Lake to give us a shuttle.
Snow Lake's kind of like between Thompson and Flin Flon, and so
right.
plane in Leaf Rapids. There's no.
But normally there would be a plane in Leaf, right?
Right. Normally there would be a plane in Thompson, but they didn't have a plane
in Thompson. Yeah.
Yeah, that could take us. So we had to pick up a guy that could shuttle us from the float plane place in Thompson, but they didn't have a plane. So we just hired a driver, and then we got a guy to fly super, super far from Snow Lake to meet us in Leaf Rapids to then fly us in and fly back. You know what I mean?
We also had to like follow all the protocols and everything too. I didn't bore everyone with that in the video, but we had to follow all these protocols and get tested and do all this stuff to make sure it was safe. And, so yeah, I mean that, and I'm kind of glad how everything worked out. That's part of why we ended up doing the trip we were doing. We were going to do something further north. We were going to do it like we started the conversation out with.
Legendary area, northern Manitoba. Yeah. What I'll ask, here's a question that somebody should ask, Dennis, no offense. It was,
go ahead.
At least I think I'm funny. But it was, what was, this is a pretty big, long trip. What was it about this trip that made this trip stand out above the rest in difficulty or whatever? And this one, it was the paddling. Also because we're solo, but it wasn't because of the intense portaging. Like crossing Labrador, we had 2 portages that lasted 2 days each. And it wasn't because of the whitewater challenge, but we'd have more challenging whitewater trips. But what it was the ridiculous, enormous distances back to back to back to back that we had to paddle. And most of the time without any portaging in between. So like enormous lakes, Big Sand Lake, 120 kilometers long. To Dooley Lake, 80, I don't know how many. I'm just going to throw out a number, 80. Right after
Danny was maybe.
Danny, 70, right after it. And there was another big lake in between. You know what I mean? And so the lake paddling and the amount of paddling and those distances that we had to cross these lakes and in the Seal and the South Seal was like, nothing, especially trying to complete that solo, even though we did have a double blade. I didn't use my double blade in the Seal because I didn't need it. But I think that was what really it is something that is possible in northern Manitoba, which isn't possible anywhere else in the world. But it's also, that's the one thing that sets this trip above sort of any other trip we've ever done.
The amount of water up there, Dennis, it's hard to explain. Like since doing YouTube more, like I always really appreciated how wild Canada was in a world that's ever more populated and wild spaces that are ever more decreasing. You get out and do these things and you recognize that wilderness. But before doing YouTube, I kind of understood it. But the more I'm putting it out there, even though I knew, having comments from people and coming back, and sometimes it's a discussion between like, oh, how can you do that? And you sort of explain it and they're like, oh man, like that's amazing. Like I can't camp without paying. I'm not allowed to have a dog here. Your fire has to be in a contained pit. And you start to realize that that's the most wild experience these people have. And I kind of feel bad, but I also feel very fortunate at how we have this expanse. I actually put out on my recent video and someone corrected me, and I wish I could fix it, that Canada has 879,000 lakes. It's actually 2 million lakes. And that's a lake that counts as a lake. It's not a pond. There's certain rules that count what's
I thought you said Manitoba has that many lakes.
No, Canada has 2 million. Manitoba has over 100,000.
Okay.
Give me my stats. Somebody could check my stats. And over 90,000 lakes in Manitoba are unnamed.
The vast majority of lakes in the province of Manitoba is completely unnamed.
Canada has more lakes than any country in the world combined. And we're talking about like true wilderness, like real frontier, like you might really discover something that's never been seen. It's a very amazing thing. And so that's part of the reason we love to do what we're doing. It's access to an emotion, a feeling, a primal nature, whatever you want to call it, that is fading in the world. And I think if you look at what's going on, even with COVID and stuff nowadays, there's this whole rise in rustic cabins, and people want to stay in cabins and they want to live off the grid. And there's all of this, there's a movement a bit away from like, let's take a step back. Like, what are we doing here? And I mean, that's a bit of this feeling we're chasing, have been chasing for a while, a little bit, and so we're still have this ability to access these kinds of places here, and they still exist here. So it's incredible. And so part of what we do is we're bringing awareness to some of these places as well, which is important to us too, because people forget they exist. They don't really know what's going on. And just like everything, it seems like it's wild. It's never happening. But I mean, on the Seal River, we crossed a water gauge meter where they're testing to see the flow on the seal, and they might slam in a hydroelectric dam. That's a common thing we see in the middle of nowhere, right? Which will put in roads and change everything. So
I don't think they will on the seal because it's a Canadian Heritage River, but
probably not. But I mean, that's one of the things. So
they're thinking about it, right? When you see that.
They're probably thinking about. They're probably also just trying to find some sort of a number to try to grade what our water resources are, potentially as well. You know what I mean? But yeah,
it probably won't when. I mean, everything happens like what Lewis and Clark was like 220 years ago, right? Like now it's Walmarts across the whole place, right? A lot changes quickly. So
we definitely like to just bring our passion about these wild, awesome, amazing areas that we have in Canada that are really globally significant, and hope that people can kind of share a little bit of that passion, and there might be more voices to try to speak up about to slow the runaway train of development that's happening in these areas.
I see Kevin's question there. I actually put out
name a lake. What would you name it?
Baird Lake.
Other than Allen Lake.
Other than Callan Lake, I put out in my last video an episode.
So there's an actual law you can't name it after your name. Sorry, Ted, I just interrupted you.
Is there really a law that says that?
Yeah, there's actually a law that said so. So like the Peak brothers, they named a river for Eric Morse. If I was going to name it something other than Casey Happy Camper Lake,
the Happy Camper Lake.
I would. Ted thought of one that would be great. It would be naming them after some of the Indigenous children that died in the residential school system. I think that would be pretty special.
Yeah.
Sorry to bring things down to that reality, but that would be something pretty special.
Yeah, I mean, there was, like I said, there was, just in Manitoba, there's 90,000 unnamed lakes. When we were passing through Thompson, they had the float plane there, and there's a lot of positive stuff about how this float planes and stuff brought economic development to the north, which is great, but it was also the exact same plane that picked the children up from the communities, the exact same plane.
I've seen that monument in your videos.
Right, so now they've put in a monument explaining that, so it's like it was
I think that's a good way
out there. There's people that have come from these actual communities, and I think it would be a good way to remember them. I mean, there's 90,000 unnamed just in Manitoba alone.
Thanks. That was Ted's idea, by the way. Somebody's just saying, Ted, that they love the idea of naming the lakes. That was actually Ted's idea.
Yeah, so I think it would be good, and that's a sad reality, and it's coming into the forefront now, into the light right now, and it's people are thinking about, this is past history. I think we're all being reminded this is current history. This is just happened, right? People are still alive here, and so. Anyway, so there you go. But yeah, that's what I would name him after, Kevin.
So I got a little bit of a closing question here. You guys got picked up by your shuttle boat, taken back to which town? That's not the question, though.
That's it. That's easy. Ted can't even get it. Churchill.
Okay, so they took you back to Churchill, which is where you guys caught the train back. So now you guys are on the train ride back. What are you thinking? What are you discussing as you're coming back? Are you talking about the trip? Are you just looking out, watching the scenery and thinking about the trip? What's going on in your mind after doing a trip like this?
I think the train ride for me was also like a bit of reflection of the trip, but also enjoying it. I mean, the train apparently it's the Muskeg Express. It's been operating at a loss for an eternity, and it had derailed and was closed 2 weeks, like a day before we got there, so we would have been stranded. But it travels at, I think one of the people made a joke that a butterfly passed the train at one point. So slow.
Gotta go slow.
It had a lot of time to reflect, eh?
Yeah, so when it goes through the muskeg, right? Because you can't build a track on muskeg; it's freezing, and so. But I was just enjoying it and really taking in how unique and special of a community Churchill is. That you got to get there by this train, and how wild it still is, and
no winter roads, 500 miles, no winter.
Yeah, and just the characters and the personality and the people that live there that are
a bit of a hodgepodge of different indigenous backgrounds, because at one point the Canadian government kind of slammed a bunch of different Native people in kind of different encampments around the area, promising them, medical help and school, and didn't really work out so well. And then you have the history of the train trying to export grain out of the prairies, but that never really caught on. They still to this day take it out of the lakehead. And so you meet a lot of interesting people there, and then there's the tourism aspect of it as well. And it's kind of a legendary kind of frontier town that you read in all the storybooks, and just a unique northern Canadian place that just should give you goosebumps when you just read it on a map.
Polar bears jumping out of the woodwork there.
Polar bear, you can't go for a jog in Churchill without carrying a shotgun. We were hanging out with a guy. He's like, "Oh yeah, let's go look at this plane that crashed outside of town." And he gets out and loads up his Winchester Defender. It's like a lot of bears around the plane. You know what I mean? And we talked to another guy who's like the polar bear guide, who got to literally a polar bear almost killed a lady, and he chased it down and blow it away, and then ran over the next block and blew another polar bear in the middle of town. He's like, polar bears are attacking people.
They're attacked. They have a polar bear jail that's bigger than jail there.
No
right?
kidding.
So they try to trap them, and they put them in the jail for a month and give them a time.
They haven't been killing people in the streets. They just
and they let them go, and so it's a very unique town. And I mean, a lot of the north is super cool, super awesome, really good. We got our boat shuttle from a guy named Jack Batstone. Really amazing guy, just amazing story in town. He works with the government and the polar bear watch and everything like that. There's even a TV show, which I think he thought was a little, the way they edited it wasn't the best, but just amazing place. So riding back on that train, you're just kind of enjoying it, and you're sort of taking in a bit of that feeling of, what it's like to not only do the trip we did, but a bit of a taste of what it's like to live in the north.
And also we did it, all the planning, all the whole videoing side of it, all these things have come together. We did it. And then after that faded away, and I'm like, I'm 6'5", and I'm trying to sleep in a double seat for 18 hours. And for the rest of the way,
how long the train ride is?
Butterflies pass it, Dennis. It's
okay, enough said. Yeah.
It's not a zero gravity magnet rocket train. I'll tell you that.
It's like you're just.
What are those called? Those electromagnetic trains? What do they call those? Bullets?
I don't know.
In Europe.
What trains? Yeah. This wasn't a bullet, eh?
This is not.
It was a blank. Yeah.
But it's actually part of you're not in a rush when you're up there. It's actually part of the enjoyment of it.
I wasn't so enjoying crushing my back trying to sleep on two chairs that are 3 feet wide, maybe 4 total, and I'm 6'5", draping out into the alley with my back snapping.
I was enjoying laughing at him in that position.
That had a few good chuckles.
Yeah. Wow. And not only that, but when you got back to your vehicle, then you had how long to drive? 3-day drive?
Well, from Leaf, it was 2,870. So, minus about 300 clicks off of that or less.
Yeah.
Yeah, but beautiful drive. Beautiful.
Oh yeah, I bet.
Oh, the wildlife you just see on the drive alone is enough to,
Yeah.
I mean, that's the other thing. You're talking about Canada and the remoteness. Like, there's like a 2-lane highway across that's it.
Let's talk about like the already like in Canada it's amazing, but also we've there's also been we used to have bison roaming the plains everywhere. There's also been a lot of stuff that we've lost too, but at this point, like the North Shore Lake Superior, we drove across that incredibly beautiful. Ted, somebody asked for driving to northern Manitoba, the wildlife and everything.
Yeah.
There you go, Tina. Asking you shall receive.
Nice. Yeah. So, I mean, super, super cool things like that for sure. So, a lot of people just do road trips to these remote places. They call it overlanding. They come totally prepared and they go off on side roads. And, just getting there was a bit of an experience in and of itself for sure.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. That's cool. Well, you know what? It's definitely a bucket list trip for this guy, and I admire that you guys took us along for the ride.
Just go do the seal. Although I will warn you, at one point after one of the most intense rapids on the trip, we did see a canoe smash into oblivion in half, lying on the bank. So, you got to be. But I would highly recommend, Dennis. You probably have lower water, just flying into Shithani Lake out of Thompson and just doing the freaking Churchill, get picked up on the coast. 10-day trip, can't go wrong, man.
Nice. Take a couple. If you're going to do all that and take the time, if you can, take a couple weeks.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. Well, if I ever plan something like that, you guys will be the first ones I'll talk to about it. Yeah, for sure. You know what, guys? Thanks very much. This has been a great night. Probably didn't cover as many things as I wanted to talk about with the show, but or with the trip. But okay, so Ted, you got 3 episodes out already. When's the next one falling?
I wanted to have it out today, but I'm not. These ones are taking me longer, Dennis, with all the multiple cameras and the audio and back and forth, and just feeling like it's not quite there. Yeah. But it's getting there. So I don't know exactly. Maybe I'll have it finished tomorrow, but any day now.
Cool.
I'm going to put, Jim? Hopefully tomorrow, it's going to be episode 2 for me. And it's going to be a banger.
Cool. Watching both perspectives, man. I'm enjoying both of them. And what's coming down the pipe for you guys? Anything you could share as far as trip wise, or anything planned together, or families type of thing? Or
after hanging out with Jim for a lot of the time,
maybe that's the soul of the Magneto one.
Yeah, no, nothing crazy right now. As far as future big trips, I just did a trip with Heather up in Wolf Lake and Chunaguchi and
Me
stuff.
and Heather do the Northwest Territories trip the 2 months trip next year.
Yeah, Jim, that was where this all began, where he pitched me on. He's like, I'm like, I'll do a month.
You know what we should do, Ted? You know what we should do?
Me on a
Labrador crossing.
2.5 months.
Or how about we do 2 trips? How about we do the Broadback and something else really badass, but not too far. So we do like the Broadback in Quebec and like the Moisey, or we go to Labrador and we do a trip in Labrador, and each one is about 2 weeks long.
My back is hurting.
He's got a sore back already.
Look at these nice lights Heather put up there. I haven't put them in my shop.
That is
Good
nice
stuff. All right, guys.
Yeah, I don't know, but we'll probably get up to something that the Moisey would be cool because it's a hardcore trip and you can do it pretty quick.
The Moisey. We'll do the Moisey during salmon peak, so we can fly fish for salmon. What do you say, Ted? In or out?
I say
out.
A lot of people asked if we're going to do the East Puckasal again. I'm not so sure that we're going to. We kind of got in there and we're like, this is sort of a playboat river. Like, I don't know.
I don't know. I'd get Puck again, but I just think that I don't know. Fuck it. Let's. Oops, sorry. I think there's other stuff to do that might be
spooked ever since he chopped his hand off.
Yeah, I think the East Puck is ours be dragons. I don't know.
I know you've given the update a million times. You want to give everybody the update?
Well, I mean, I can't raise. So this, see how this is like this? I can do that. But see how this droops down?
Oh, yeah,
you can blow it. I can't raise it up to this.
Oh, so you weren't giving
away
it the finger.
once that
That's
gets
your
caught
actual
on stuff.
bungled finger.
You know, and then like I can give the finger like this, but with this hand, I'm like, I have to do it like the American movie style. I can't actually give the finger like that with that hand. So it's permanently dickered. But,
So as far as bungling goes, that was a category 40 bungle.
It goes up to category 5.
Category 5 bungle where
know
he
if that was
chopped his hand off. He bungled so
like
hard.
bungling is when you're taking time and you're bungling and you're screwing. You just, I don't know if that was a bungle. That was just like, that's a different category of things altogether. I don't know what category that is.
I'm gonna call it a bungle. You know, he's just carrying too many bags, bungling. The sheath fell off. He's bungling so hard he almost chopped his arm off. You know?
Will you guys do the sat phone thing again?
What do you mean? Oh,
well,
yeah.
You guys had that satellite system, right? On this
The
trip.
satellite system is honestly, it's so sick. So, like, we brought. I was working with the satellite phone store. And, so the original satellite phone is epic. The Beacon, it's like has an internal battery. And it lasts for a long time, and it runs off of Immersat, I believe. And you just kind of turn it on, it beeps, and you're like, beep, and you get a signal. And you can like FaceTime people with it and be like, look at what we're looking at. Like, and it's heavier than a sat phone for sure, but it's super cool because you could literally work. You could like go into the office and send your emails from the Seal River. Also make phone calls and stuff from it. So as a one thing, that's a pretty cool thing. I liked all of them. You know what I mean? So you don't need all of those things, of course. You don't need all of them. But as a one option thing,
for that, and we were also testing them out to see if they would work that far north. So we had a few different systems that we were kind of like testing and grading. And it might in the future. Right now, the technology's not there, so that something like a Beacon isn't really affordable for your average cat, but it might be an opportunity for us to share more things in real time in the future, and that might come down as well in price.
It depends. Like the Beacon, if you wanted to, because people actually work with it. So, and of course, there's people in minerals or whatever they're doing, but if you want to make a phone call, you can make a phone call. If you wanted to send some emails, you can get like a monthly plan and stuff like that. So it depends how much you use it. If you're going to be like FaceTiming and live streaming, yeah, it could add up. But anyway, it was pretty cool.
Sorry, Dennis, if we've acted a little crazy on this.
No, man, this has been a great night. Are you kidding? I think everybody's really enjoying this. So
for reality TV show characters,
Yeah. No.
Anyway, it was cool, but yeah, I like all those gadgets. But yeah, I mean, you don't need all of those things. I do like the ability to make a call, but then of course
Ted's still going on about this shit. Like
the InReach that you use is a great thing too, right? Because it kind of does everything. So that's a great thing.
Yeah.
What's that one?
The InReach. InReach is you mean the SSI, which is an InReach and a GPS together.
Right. Yeah, those are sick.
The only thing is you suck batteries using it as a GPS, and so you don't want to run out of batteries in your InReach. Because it's 2-in-1, so just bring a charger, bring a backup, and then you're good to go.
I kind of really enjoyed that though, that you guys were actually uploading stuff to Facebook and everything, the images and stuff from where you were.
Yeah.
It's pretty, the technology is pretty unique with that, eh?
Yeah. I thought it was, and I was stressed out about it, right? Because it was such hard days, and I was like, it's going to be blah, blah, blah. But I was like, once we did it, I'm like, wow, like that was okay. That was super easy, right? So, it really is just like signing on. What's your Wi-Fi password? Okay, there it is. And then everything's business as usual, right? So it was kind of cool.
You share some of that in your videos, Ted, right? You share a little bit more about how those things work and that. Yeah, the Beacon, the satellite Beacon, and what was the other? The Iridium Go too. Both of those things are
that was cool too, because apparently a lot of sailors use that because you can you actually predict the wind as opposed to just weather.
But then you can you download an app into your smartphone, you turn on the Iridium Go, and then you can have two people using their smartphones as satellite phones through the Iridium Go.
Yeah. There you go, Jim.
Hey, thank you, Julia.
So Ted, are they a sponsor of yours?
Yeah, I was. Yeah, so I was working with it's the Satellite Phone Store as a sponsor.
Okay.
So we sent up those gadgets, and yeah, they were pretty good. I enjoyed them. What was cool about them too is that you can get a monthly plan rental as opposed to buying minutes and all that stuff. So anyway,
very cool.
Just
cool.
Martin just lost it over the chicken in the woods. Loved it. Pine Martin came over, and I don't know if anybody watches Pine Martin on YouTube, but he's got a pretty cool YouTube channel.
I thought that was going to be Pine Martin that you were.
Yeah, so Pine Martin came over because I'm at Nate Muskoka's place here. Instagram, Nate Muskoka in Huntsville. He let us use the place because my Wi-Fi is too crappy.
Hey, Martin, come on.
And anyway, so he came over, and he is a big wild edible mushroom guy. And the first thing he noticed was this. And he's like, "Whoa!" He thought that was pretty awesome. So yeah, I literally pulled over at the side of the road and chopped this off of a tree on my drive here because I just stopped. I'm like, "Whoa! I gotta get that, eh?" That's a pretty good one.
Awesome.
So yeah,
thank you, Julia.
I
Appreciate
didn't bring a bottle of wine over to Nate's place. I brought a huge chicken of the woods over.
Cool. Is he still there now?
Yeah, he's sitting right over here.
Martin is?
Martin and Nate are sitting on the couch right across.
Oh, fellas, we'll see you in the green room. With that being said, let's close this up here. And yeah, man, you guys, thank you very much. Really enjoying the series. Keep it coming. And yeah, keep those adventures alive because
Dennis, next time you have the show, could you just vet Ted to not be such a jerk to me? Just before the show starts, be like, "Ted, stop! Don't be such a jerk."
Dennis is trying to give his final thoughts, Jim.
No. You guys can take this up on your next video that you're going to post online. That's everybody loves.
You should do a highlight reel of this, eh?
Keep the adventures alive.
Shit, I lost my train of thought.
What a surprise. Well, thanks a lot for having us, Dennis. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you guys taking the time out of your night. It's been, I know, just trying to get the two of you together at the same time is a pretty tough task because you're both in separate households. Like Ted said, it's not like you guys live together, right? So, and how's Bella and Heather doing?
They're good. Yeah,
they're good. Did the big wake them both up, or?
I don't know. She was on here chirping me earlier, so she's probably called me said I was bungling, I think so.
All right. I'm going to drop you guys down in the basement there. I'll close up the show, and I'll see you in the green room in a couple minutes.
All right. I'm going to take
Thanks again, fellas.
Hey.
There you have it, everybody. What a fun night, man. Every time you get these two guys together, it's always it's a real hoot. We'll call it a hoot, right? Let's see here. If you missed any of the show, man, go back and watch the whole replay. You know what? It's always a good time. If you haven't already done so and you haven't hit that thumbs up down there, help out Canoehound Adventures. Help us get a little more recognized here on YouTube by hitting that thumbs up. It shows YouTube that people are interceptive to the show and that they really appreciate it or that they take time to watch it. If you haven't already done so, hit the subscribe button. If you're new to the channel, we have all kinds of great content like this. Go back in our library. Even this is our 4th episode this year. We've already had some fantastic guests on. We've had Les Stroud, we've had the Baird brothers, we've had Hunter and Harris. Next week, we've got Xander Budnick. So you know what? If you guys want to see some great content from week to week, we just keep plugging away here, and we want to bring you some enjoyable stuff. If you want to know what's going on with the channel, follow us on Facebook at Canoehounds Outdoor Adventure Show. That's my page there, and I've always got new stuff on there. And feel free to check out our channel membership thing down here. That's always a good thing to help support the channel. And that's about it. So until next time, everybody, remember, keep the adventures alive. Have a great week. We'll see you next Tuesday.